Hello, everybody. Welcome back to G&J's Epic Quest. I am Justorian, and DC's.
Dereker, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing okay. It's been a weird week, and I don't really know. I don't really think I have anything to say was great or bad. It was just kind of a mediocre week. Do you?
Uh, nothing. Nothing too crazy, I guess. We lost two guys at my job, so things are a little bit more hectic that way because we're down two people for now. But other than that, yeah, pretty quiet week. Otherwise, our one cat appears to have a urinary tract infection, so we're dealing with that. Yeah, not too much otherwise.
Is it a male cat?
No, both
Oh,
our cats are female.
gotcha. You gonna put him on that urinary diet?
Probably, yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. Kelly posted something on Facebook, and Danny commented on it, and that's. I think that's probably what we're gonna do.
Gotcha. Yeah. Danny knows tons about pets. So
So it was appreciated.
okay. Well, I will let her know, but I'm sure
Good
that
deal.
she got that message. Yeah, anyway, I know that you had a podcast with Maura and Lee yesterday, and I was honored enough to join for the last 8 minutes of that podcast. So I would honestly say that that was probably like the highlight of my week, even though it was so short-lived. Um,
Uh, well,
yeah.
I'm glad you were able to come crash the party.
Yeah, I think that we should maybe TikTok me joining in and have like, it came in like a wrecking ball. Yeah,
That'd be funny.
yeah,
That was a good time talking with them. It always is. So
yeah. Yeah, it's always nice to join the party when everybody's three shoots to the wind. Like they both seemed pretty enamored.
yeah, at Lee. I mean, we talked for about an hour ish, and I think Lee had two beers. I'm not sure if Moore was drinking some wine or not, but um,
Uh,
for the first time I wasn't drinking anything. So
I just never have any alcohol on hand. It's one of those things that I just never think about. That's just due to trauma in my life. That's the reason why I don't have alcohol. But you would think that with traumatic experiences, there would be alcohol. So I don't know.
I,
It is what
I
it
mean,
is.
not a big deal. I mean, to not have it, I mean,
I
your
know.
experiences are.
It was just so much fun in my 20s. Like I absolutely loved it. But now I'm a very cheap date. Like one or two beers gets me pretty buzzed. So,
Yeah.
oh well. What do you do?
Well, should we get into this first chapter of the subbook?
Yeah, chapter 15 already. We are definitely not cruising, but it sure feels that way.
That's true.
And our 18th episode. So this will be our 49th episode overall. And then when we do our subbook wrap up, it'll be our 50th.
Are you sure about that? Since we are recording a little bit out of order,
Oh,
is
you're right.
this
So this would technically be our 51st episode
depending
because
on how it's released?
so I have to wait to edit this episode for like
I
three.
guess that's up to you.
Maybe I'll just edit it and not upload it. Maybe upload it, but just schedule it for like a day later, or I don't know. I'll figure it out.
I don't know if it'd be that big of a deal to have this episode come out before the subbook wrap up.
It's kind of out of order though, because like
I mean, not. I mean, maybe kind of, but I mean, we already covered the last chapter. So I mean, anything that we cover next week isn't going to be spoilers.
well, no, but I mean, it's more just for the audience. Like if they listen to this chapter and then listen to the wrap up, like there may be, I don't know. I don't know. I'll just stick it in order. It's really not that big of a deal to not edit. So it's fine. I really don't mind having a week where I don't have to edit something.
We take a little break.
Right. Yeah. I'll just wait. They'll just maybe pick at it. It'll be all right.
Sure. All right.
Cool. Well, there are two epigraphs because we just started the subbook Deadhouse. Do you want me to take the first one, you take the last one, or vice versa?
I think that sounds good. And then yeah, you can go into your first section there.
Awesome. So the epigraph for Deadhouse subbook is Coltane rattles slow across the burning land. The wind howls through the bones of his late ridden command. Coltane leads a chain of dogs, ever snapping at his hand. Coltane's fist bleeds the journey home, along rivers of red-soaked sand. His train howls through his bones in spiteful reprimand. Coltane leads a chain of dogs, ever snapping at his hands. Coltane, a marching song of the bone hunters.
It's kind of cool.
It is, and I feel like this is the first one that like really rhymes. Is that just me?
I
Or
guess I feel like this is the first one that's probably like a song that soldiers would sing.
right?
Well, the epigraph for the chapter is a little bit shorter, one sentence. A god walking, is that a typo there, Justin? A god walking mortal earth trails blood. Sayings of the fool, Fenny's Buell.
So,
No, no big deal there. I didn't want to read it as it was written and look like an idiot.
I guess I don't know. I don't have my book. It's upstairs. So,
I guess I've got mine right here. I think it was more. Mortal seems to make more sense.
but I could also see moral Earth being possible. But I'm gonna guess it's mortal. I'm not gonna take a pie for that one.
No, no, that's fine. I'm just paging back. It is mortal.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the Google document like auto corrects me, and it's like, no, that's not what I fucking want. But anyway, here is the first section from chapter 15 of Deadhouse Gates. A sailor is loading cargo and talking to Kalam about Coltane's chain of dogs. Kalam seems to be half listening as he seems kind of distracted. During the sailor's stacking of bales, he mentions that Corblo Dom and Camus Rouleau have joined forces. The sailor moves in conversation and points out to Kalam that the High Fist's seal was on all of this cargo. The sailor suggests that the High Fist is loading his loot and turning tail, because why else was the treasurer be coming aboard, along with 20 Marines and 2 perfumed elects? Kalam, still distracted, said that the sailor may have a point about the High Fist, and it was something that did catch Kalam's attention. Kalam questioned the man about what he meant about the 2 perfumed elects. The sailor said that he saw a man not 10 minutes ago. He was slick as rat spit. The sailor kept insulting the man. When the sailor was done, Kalam asked, what of the other one? The sailor said that he hasn't seen him yet, but explains to Kalam what he's heard of the man. The sailor explains that the second perfumed elect came aboard before the captain had sprung him and the sailors from the harbor hole as they had been arrested. Kalam asked what their last port was and what cargo they were carrying. The sailor says Falari, and they were carrying weapons in advance of Tavor's fleet. Kalam asked if there wouldn't be time for a refit. The sailor said that there never is time, but Baru blesses you, and you do what you can. Kalam at this point tells the sailor that he is the second perfumed elect. There was silence for a while, and the sailor apologized. Kalam said that it was all good and that he's just a cautious man, and his nerves haven't been eased. The sailor assured Kalam that all was well, and the captain knew what he was doing, and the captain had a lucky shirt. Kalam told the man that he's seen this lucky shirt. Kalam stepped over 2 chests bearing the High Fist seal, and then reached the ladder rail. He paused and asked the sailor what the rebel activity was like out on the Sahul. The sailor said that it was getting hotter. Kalam wonders if there is an escort. The sailor explains that the High Fist has commanded Nock's fleet to hold this harbor. They will have cover crossing Aran Bay until about the edge of the Dojal Hodding Sea. Kalam grimaced at hearing that and then climbed the ladder to the main deck. Kalam made his way around crewmen who were busy and made his way through the hustle and bustle of the ship until finally stopping at the stern castle. He observed a huge Malazan transport on the other side of the dock. Kalam hadn't seen the captain since they came aboard 2 days ago. He was shown the room that was purchased by Salk Ilan and left alone to his own vices, while the captain went to release his crew from jail. Kalam heard voices and turned his head to see the captain arrive on deck. Accompanying him was a very tall man who was flanked by a pair of bodyguards. Both bodyguards were huge, with big, gnarly beards, and they were dressed in full armor. From behind him, he heard an ah, and that would be Pormqual's treasurer. Kalam was startled by this and turned to find the speaker leaning against the railing. Kalam thought to himself that this was a knife's thrust away. The man smiled and said that Kalam was well described. Kalam studied the man. He was lean and young. Kalam responds to the man's questions by asking who described him. Salk said that it was a mutual friend in Irliton. Kalam said that he didn't have any friends in Irliton. Salk gave him as this was a man that was indebted to Kalam, and in turn was whom he was indebted to, thus leading to the arrangements of getting Kalam out of Erin. Salk explains further that Mebra concluded that after dropping off the book with Shaik, that you would be headed for Erin. He had planted a tripwire at the gate at the Imperial Warren, and when it was tripped, it set off a series of prearranged events. He stopped to scan the city's rooftops and then explained that his activities in Erin have been curtailed somehow, making it difficult to make arrangements. Kalam said that the captain doesn't strike him as a man with cheap loyalties. Kalam struggled to hide his alarm and had a thought about Mebra knowing his plans to kill Lasine. And if he knew, who else knew? The treasurer on the deck could be heard voicing his complaints at the captain. Salk turns to Kalam and tells him that the captain was not cheap, but rather non-existent. Kalam just grunted at hearing this. Inside his mind, though, he was both disappointed that his feint had not worked, but pleased to have a better picture of the man that was the captain. Salk explains more about the captain. Kalam tells Salk that he knew there was a reason the assassin liked the captain so much. Elan laughs and tells Kalam that he looks forward to sharing a meal with him and the captain. Kalam smiles in return and tells Elan Salk that he will not leave his back open to him again. They shared some banter between each other before stepping back to observe the captain continuing to be yelled at by the treasurer. Salk suggests that they interfere as it wasn't proper etiquette. Kalam agrees, however, he suggests that it's not their affairs to interfere. Salk Iban suggests that it is their concern because they don't want the crew to spit in their passengers' meals. Kalam tells Iban that he has a point. They both step down onto the deck and approach the captain. Iban interrupts the treasurer's beratement of the captain. One of the bodyguards edged forward, a large hairy hand on his tulwar. The treasurer starts to call Iban a crab's anus and some other very good curses, and then orders Megra, the bodyguard that edged forward, to beat the man senseless. The captain tells everyone that there will be none of that. A dozen sailors rushed between the guard and Salk Ivan. The captain continued to say that he and the coin counter will continue their discussion in the cabin. The captain ordered the bodyguards to be checked for vermin and their armor to be put away. A loud thud was heard as the treasurer had collapsed. The captain took one look at the man and told the man's bodyguard to pick him up and take him to the cutter to have those clothes removed and have their treasure be inspected for lice. The captain turned to Kalam and Salk and told the pair to meet him in his cabin.
I think that should be one of our nicknames from now on.
What?
Crab's anus.
Yeah, and blood smeared turd was the other one, I think.
Yeah. I think about that, like, if I get into an argument with somebody, if I call, just out of nowhere, you call them like a crab's butthole, like, you're just going to catch them so off guard. They're going to be like,
what?
Well, I'm done with this now. How do you top that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know about you, and I know we kind of talked about it via text, but to me, the section just feels so out of place compared to what we've read. I don't know if you still feel the same after reading the chapter again, but it just, something feels off about this section. And maybe
I think after reading it a second time, to me, it feels like it fits a little bit more. But yeah, the first time reading it was kind of odd.
It was really jarring.
Yeah, but I wonder like how long of a journey Kalam's going to be on here. How long it's going to take.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like he's going to be thwarted in some way, shape, or form. And I think part of the reason why it's a little jarring for me is that, we get introduced to this new character who is indebted to Mebra because Mebra is indebted to Kalam. And just this whole storyline with like the book Kalam, Mebra, and now like Elon, Salk Elon or whatever, just because we don't have a ton of information on them or that particular storyline at this point, I feel like it's just being thrown new information,
Do you think he's a red blade or something else? I mean, I think he's going to be somebody kind of important. Like he'll probably stick around for a little bit. I feel like I don't think he's a claw because I feel like Kalam would probably know other claws, but maybe he's a talon because who sneaks up on a claw? Like I just don't feel like that happens.
Right. He very well could be a Talon. Yeah, I guess I don't know. It's one of those things where like Mebra gives me the willies because I don't trust him because he's a Malazan spy under the guise of like a soldier of the apocalypse. So yeah, I just something just feels setty uppy, if that's really a phrase, but it just feels like Kalam is being set up for something.
Something's going to happen.
Right. But anyway, so Dom, Corbelow Dom, and Thomas Rouleau have joined forces, and it was said that it was 50 to 60,000 swords, plus the tribes amassing to the south of the Vathar River. And I know we got Coltane's perspective on how he plans to beat this army to the Vathar River, but I wonder if that won't take place. Like
I've been thinking about that too. It may be a little bit different way than what you are. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was at the end of that. Please, your thoughts.
Are you sure? Are you sure? I feel like I just brooded my way in against you.
No, I said what I had to say.
I mean, we've heard like there used to be this big forest there, and I think on like the north side of the river it's just been wiped out, and part of it on the other side has too. But they're going to be well, this is later on in the chapter, I guess. But I think it's going to be, man, I think we're going to see some really like guerrilla tactics here more than we already have from Coltane. Like, I think, once they get into this forest, he's going to be setting booby traps. Like, I don't know if he's going to like send people up into the trees to, I don't know. But there's a lot of possibilities there, I think. But it's going to be
a different style of fighting than what we're used to.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be like some like Vietnam type shit that's going to go down.
That's fair. I guess my only question is like at this point in the book, they're not even halfway to Aaron yet, and we only have what 300-ish, a little over 300-ish pages. Like, how is he going to reach Aaron in that many pages?
Yeah, I don't know. Either that or we're just going to see a ton of him, right? Like right. The rest of the book. Yeah, I'm just pulling up the map now because yeah, he's not the Vathar River yet, right?
Right. I mean, they're close to it, but they're not. Yeah. So I kind of wonder if they're going to leave us with a cliffhanger when it comes to Coltane. But also, the epigraph says a song of the Bone Hunters. So I know that we also have a book called The Bone Hunters. So I'm wondering if the Bone Hunters are Coltane's Wiccans. I don't know.
No idea.
I always thought they were like the Talani Mass.
We're gonna have to just Rafo.
Right. Well, I guess we'll come back to it in about 3 years. We'll come back to the question.
Right.
Another thing that I thought was cool was when the sailor was talking about the two perfumed elects. He calls the first one that he looks like rat spit, and he assumes the second one is the same, but he rattles off that the man was from 7 cities and he came aboard with the captain 2 days prior, which is exactly Kalam, right? So he pretty much described Kalam's events to Kalam, so where that information really goes, not really anywhere, but it was just cool that he was basically describing Kalam's boarding the ship.
You think he was like, after Kalam told him that he was the second, you think he's like, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have said any of that?
Probably.
Like, I just put my foot in my mouth.
Right. Which I think Kalam was just like, you know what? No need to apologize. It's just me being careful because that's just who I am, which I guess was cool. But, Kalam just, he feels off center ever since he went into the Imperial Warren. And I don't know if Manala had something to do with that, but he just doesn't seem, he seems off kilter to me. He doesn't seem like he has that confidence that we're so used to.
I don't think I have anything to add on that. Yeah, he seems a little flustered, I guess, is maybe the way I feel.
Right. Like and I think it's because of this flustered that he didn't sense Salk Elon standing behind him. Like he
That
would.
could be.
It just doesn't seem like the Kalam on, on the top of Jerujistan's rooftops battling a bunch of Tistiandi and the Assassin's Guild at the same time, Like requires some fucking quick reflexes and some good mental gymnastics, and I don't see any of that.
Yeah, he's not on his A game.
Right. So I wonder if that's going to land him in trouble in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. But anyway, I mean, we'll just probably have to keep reading and see how that pans out.
True.
I know that the sailor mentions the god Baru. He says, like, Baru bless you. And I don't know if we've ever been introduced to that yet. And I didn't see that name in the back or the front of this book. I feel like we've heard Baru before, but I can't remember if there was an explanation.
I'm not remembering any explanation, but the name, I don't remember if we have or have not heard it before.
Oh, well.
Sorry, I don't have any further info for you.
No, it's cool. So one of the other things is that Salk Elon kind of goes on this huge rambling of information to Kalam. And Kalam has this thought of like, okay, well, if Mebra has put it together that I'm on my way to kill Lucien, who else knows? And this tells me that and suggests that Mebra is a talker. Another reason to not trust that he gave Kalam the right book. Way too much deception around this character. But also, we don't have a ton of interactions with him. And sometimes Erickson likes to lead us one way and then lead us completely opposite direction. And
Hey, I think that happened in this chapter.
right. Exactly. Because there was an example of that in this chapter.
A very good one.
I don't know if Mebra is legit or if he's like double crossing, the Mesla dogs or whatever. I don't want another pie. So please just let the fucking book be fake, is all I'm trying to say.
Well, what if it's not two pies, Justin? It's just one really big one.
I don't know. We'll let Jan decide that.
Like it's just going to wrap around your head.
Yeah, like I got to take a 20-minute shower to get it out. I'm glad I don't have long hair anymore.
Are you gonna shave your beard before you take this pie to the face?
I might, just to make things weird. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I just don't want another pie. I don't want a big pie. I just want you to have a pie as well. I guess it is what it is. Anyway, moving on. Towards the end of this section, Kalam and Elon Salk Elon Iban, I don't know why I keep saying Elon, have a little bit of some shared banter between each other, and it more entails with Kalam saying, you're not gonna sneak up on me, or I'm not gonna leave your back open to me again. And they're like, Iban's like, oh, well, I'm glad we can come to that understanding. And then Kalam's just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about understanding. Much more beautifully laid out in the actual section itself. But I got the feeling that Kalam and Salk were having a battle of wits of sorts. Like they were just trying to see who had the bigger dick, I guess, is kind of what I took that as.
I'm not sure where or why you changed typing his name, but it is Salk Elon. It's
Oh,
not Iban.
weird. Okay. I don't
I
know, man.
just I had to look in the book because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Elon.
Okay. Well, then I must have like I don't know. Like I
But I
said,
see you have it typed both ways in here, so I don't know what caused you to change that. But
I don't know either. I don't know either. It's all good. I will admit I kind of struggled summarizing this section because it felt a little all over the place. Just the way that it opened up, I guess I didn't have a hard time visualizing it. I just had a hard time understanding what it all meant. And I think that goes back to Mebra, that goes back to Salkilon, that goes back to the captain, which was just introduced 2 chapters ago, you know. So yeah, I feel like the majority of this information is relatively newer. So I struggled with it a little bit.
no worries, man. I don't feel like you say that very often. I know I say that once in a while, but I don't feel like you say you struggle very often. So
I
it's
mean,
all
I
right.
understand it definitely more, and I probably should have waited to have summarized it because what I like to do when I summarize is like I'll read the book, or I won't read the book, excuse me. I'll read the chapter that we're having an episode on, and then I will summarize it directly after that, and then I will read it through after I've summarized it, just to put all of the things in place that I caught while summarizing it, and then I'll read it another time if I can, if I have time. So
Gotcha.
so I think that maybe I should have waited to summarize this one until after I had read it twice. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand it a lot more now. At the end of the day, when I first did it, I was like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah, I just, the only other thing that I had about this section is just the whole treasurer and Pormqual. Like, that's another thing that is new to us, right? Like, we got a little bit of Pormqual in the beginning of the book, with Malik Rel, why is he running? Why is he? It definitely feels like he is packing up his shit and leaving.
Yeah, and I get to me it gives me the sense that he's like he knows they're fucked. Like he's just getting the hell out of Dodge. Just like this isn't gonna work. I'm gonna take my shit. I'm gonna go deal with this later when we have the army together. Some I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I think that to me that must be what he's thinking is that he doesn't think he can hold the city.
Gotcha. See, I had a thought about Pormqual and his cases or his cargo with all his seals on it. I think that what's going to happen is Kalam's going to uncover the real book of Dryjana on this boat. And then I think he's going to figure out that he's being set up in some way, shape, or form. And then eventually he meets back up with Fiddler, Apslar, etc. at Tremolor so that they can go, I don't know. Or they meet up with, Apsalar and Fiddler after they reach wherever their destination is, Quantali. Um, and that's when Kalam will give the book to Apsalar and she becomes Shaik Reborn.
I'm sure we'll have some interesting discussion here.
Yeah, that's just, and I mean, we can kind of go into it as we unveil some of these other sections. So I think that the book is on the ship, and I think that's the reason why Mebra sent Salk here. I don't know. I don't,
Interesting. Well, earlier in the book, didn't they say that it was? Did they say it was at a library in Aaron? I don't remember where it
yes, he
was, or was it
did.
somewhere else? Hmm.
He did. So this
Maybe
is
you're
what
right
tells
then.
me that the book was a setup, and like I said, we can kind of talk more about that in one of the later sections. There's so much juicy information in this chapter. And I feel like we will be done recording at about 4:30 p.m.
If you turn out to be right on that, that would have been like the call of the century that you were right on that about the book.
Yep,
I wouldn't even be mad that I'm going to get pied in the face because of it, but
because it's just so great.
I'm not even mad you ate a whole block of cheese.
Fair. All right. The only other thing that I wanted to comment on in this section was I really loved the treasurer's creative cursing. I really enjoyed
Yes.
that part. It's nice to have those small little humorous moments, like when the sailor and Kalam were talking about the captain's lucky shirt, and Kalam is just like, "Yep, I've seen it." You know, it's just nice to have some raunchy humor thrown in there.
Yeah. For how dark this book is, there's definitely been some, I guess, like lighter moments, things that like make me chuckle, and those curses, especially the Crab Zanus one, like maybe it's just because I'm a 10-year-old boy, but I thought that was funny.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Crabs anus.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, I digress. Anyway, that's all the thoughts that I had for this first section here. Like I said, definitely a lot more clarity comes to the section the more you read it. However, at first it does feel a little jarring, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I'm glad it's there because I feel like this is one of the few chapters where we had like basically all the characters in that chapter.
Right, absolutely. But I feel like, you're not expecting it. So it is a bit jarring because it feels like, because you're reading about almost every character, that it's a little bit all over the place again. And I know that that's not the intention, but your first time reading it, it's just like usually it focuses on one or two groups, and then kind of like switches on and off
Yeah,
for each chapter. I mean, and it's not like I didn't understand the chain of events that were happening in this first section. It's just the meaning of those events. Like I can understand where things are what is happening, but like the deeper meaning behind them is just what is eluding me a little bit more. And
gotcha.
that's just what made it a little more chaotic for me, I guess.
Sure.
But anyway, on to your little quick section here.
Yeah, I think we both had probably one good long section and then just kind of some shorter ones. So the room was not much bigger than Kalam's, also just about as empty. The captain found some mugs and shared some of his sour ale. Without the offer of a toast, the captain chugged half of his mug and wiped his face with his hand. Looking around the room, but not at the other two men, he said, "The rules. Stay out of the treasurer's way. The situation is complicated, with the admiral under arrest." Kalam interjected, surprised by what he had heard, asking by whose authority he was arrested. The captain said by the High Fist's order. It was the only way to keep the fleet in the bay. Kalam continued saying, "The Empress." This time the captain interrupted him and said, "She probably doesn't know. There's not been a claw in the city in months, and no one knows why." Elon suspected that in their absence, there was no one to challenge Pormqual's decisions. The captain said, "Yeah, basically." Also, the treasurer arrived onto his ship with a writ stating he had authority over the captain if he so chose. But here's where it gets tricky. The captain holds an imperial charter, but neither he or his ship or his crew are Imperial Navy, which is why things are a bit tricky, like he said. Kalam put his mug down and said that right across the bay there's an Imperial ship getting ready to leave, just like they are. Why isn't Pormqual sending his treasurer and all his shit there? The captain said, "Yes, this is all true, and it will be leaving for Unta shortly after they cast off also, loaded with Pormqual's horse household items and breeding horses. It will be crowded, and it will smell like horseshit." He continued on, saying the rag stopper is fast when she needs to be and to drink up. The Marines will be on board shortly, and he means to leave within the hour. Both on the struggle bus a little bit here today, buddy.
Yeah, I guess it's been a while since we recorded at noon. Always like, 5 or 6 at night. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. I mean, we definitely get more information about Pormqual, and it sounds like he's arrested Admiral Knock, but I guess, I'm sure your question is why, right? So what do you think?
I think it's probably answered for us in the chapter. If he wasn't arrested, they'd probably send the fleet out to go maybe help Coltane or whoever. But if he's arrested, he's got, Pormqual's got control of the fleet then, and he can just keep them all there for his reasons, I guess. It doesn't sound like to me that there's like some other fleet coming to invade, by sea. I don't know if you get that vibe. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting right now.
I mean, in the previous chapter, they talk about the bay. I forget what it's called.
Aaron Bay.
Pretty much. But it's the bay that, they could cut across from Aaron to Umbard, which is kind of a conversation that happens later on in this book or this chapter, which we can kind of revisit. It sounds like the rebels have the CLC, which is the sea kind of between the Otatero mines and the mainland of Seven Cities. So it kind of sounds like they have that under lock and key as far as the rebels go. So I think that it's maybe alluding to some type of impending naval takeover of Aaron.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, unless he's just going to get all the nobles out from the city and all their shit. But I mean, we kind of hear later too that there's not many people left in the city either. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely sounds like Aaron is losing control, which, I mean, isn't good for Coltane.
Yeah. I don't even know what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, with the information that we have, Nock is arrested or dead, and Pormqual is bailing. So I can only assume that means that they're losing control of the city, or Pormqual has other motivations. I think it's interesting that Lucene isn't aware, and there's no clause in the city. You would think that with one of the last remaining cities being held by Malazan forces, that you would, like, maybe Lucene is just giving up hope.
Yeah, we don't really know what she's thinking or doing, so yeah, it's hard to say.
Also, we have mentioned in the previous section about Tavor, because their previous port was Falari, which I'm not sure exactly where that is on the map, but it sounds like they were loading up a bunch of not ammunition, but a bunch of weapons for Tavor in advance of Tavor's fleet. So maybe they're just restructuring somewhere else. I don't know.
I'm trying to look on the map here quick to see if I can find it. I'm not seeing it here, but I'm looking quick also. So yeah, I don't know.
Dare I look it up?
No, on the internet, I wouldn't.
All right.
Who knows what you'll get? I don't think we want to take that chance.
No, exactly. But yeah, there's something fishy going down, and I just can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, this section I didn't have a lot of thoughts on. I had a couple, what we're kind of already talking about, but he's just bailing on the city. Maybe he knows. Well, I mean, he must know there's no claw there also, so it just must be a lost cause is maybe what he sees.
That's what I'm kind of wondering myself.
My other thought, and I don't know that this really makes a big difference, but it's I guess it kind of relates to the trickiness that the captain's talking about. But he says he's got an imperial charter, so to me that sounds like he must be subcontracted out by the government or navy or whatever, basically saying you're working for us even though you're not a part of the navy proper, but you're. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. I guess in the right words, your ship is being conscripted into the navy. You're going to do what we tell you to do, kind of deal.
Right.
I don't know.
But you can still, you're not part of the Navy. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. That makes total sense.
You're a part, but you're not a part.
Right. You do what we say when we say it. Outside of that, we don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, it was a really cool section. I'm glad that we got a little bit more information. Again, it's just you get the feeling that not all is well.
Yeah, it doesn't seem good.
So, yeah, I guess if you're ready to move on, I am.
Definitely. Take it away here.
All right. Outside the captain's cabin, Salk shook his head and muttered that the captain couldn't be serious. Kalam asked the man what he meant. Salk said that the ale was terrible. Kalam seems to ignore the comment and asks a question of why no claws have been in the city. Salk just shrugs and explains that Aaron is not what it used to be. Shaik's rebels spreading murder and mayhem, and with the Warrens not being what they used to be, Salk suggests that Kalam knows more about the Warrens than he does. Kalam asks if that was supposed to be a response to his question about the claws. Salk responds by saying that he wouldn't go near a claw with a 10-foot pole. He brightened as he had a pleasing thought. He tells Kalam that maybe the treasurer wouldn't survive heat intolerance. Without a word, Kalam starts walking away to his cabin. He heard Salk sigh as he turned the opposite direction and climbed the ladder to the main deck. Kalam went inside, closed the door, and then leaned against it. He thought to himself that it was better to walk into a trap he saw coming than one he didn't see. The thought didn't give him any comfort, as he wasn't sure if he was caught up in a trap. Mebra's web was vast. Salk Elon was likely a mage, and one that could handle himself in a fight, none of which put Kalam at ease. The assassin sighed, and then the man knew bad ale when he tasted it. So again, I feel like this conversation between Elon and Kalam is just off track. Like, they don't seem to be answering each other's questions, or very rather like beat around the bush. So I don't know what to make of it, and I feel like it's perpetuating this feeling of unease.
Yeah, it's just kind of like they're talking in circles to each other, isn't it?
Right. But I also feel like, Salk Elon pointing out that the Warrens are crowded, which, this is not new information, but it also seems that this is also part of, it could be the reason why Pormqual is bailing and why there are no claws in the cities. So I feel like he's kind of answering his question, but Kalam doesn't really seem to get it, But yeah, I don't know.
It's just all very indirect.
Right. And, again, I know we talked about it a little bit, but Mebra, I just like, I feel like I align with Kalam and that there's definitely a trap. And I don't know if he is actually seeing this trap or not, or if he's just kind of like thinking it is. But I feel like I don't trust Mebra, so therefore I don't trust Salk Elon.
I don't trust Elon either, but he does intrigue me. There's got to be more to him. I just don't know what that is right now.
Oh, for sure. Oh wow, I sounded really Minnesotan there. But yeah. Ghost on a boat wearing boots,
Nicely done.
Thanks, man. Anyway, yeah, that was really all I had. It was a short section, and the conversation something just feels fishy.
Yeah, it does. We'll have to see if we get any resolution on that, I guess.
Oh, I'm sure
we will.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be revealed at some point. Just like in Gardens of the Moon, it feels like we keep getting more questions to answer than we get answers for questions we have already.
Right. Yeah. But I don't have anything else. If you don't, I'm cool to move on.
Sure. Another shorter section here. As the High Fist's horses were led into the Imperial Yard, it was chaos. Horse handlers, dock workers, and others tried to control the skittish horses to create some semblance of order and control. There was a woman holding the reins to a beautiful stallion, and she seemed to be the only calm one about. When the master was finally able to arrange for it to be loaded, she was one of the first up to the ship with her horse, and while the master knew every horse handler and horse in his care, his attention was so divided he did not realize that he didn't recognize this horse or its handler. Minala had watched the ragstopper cast off a few hours earlier after some Marines and their gear were loaded onto the boat. It was towed out of the harbor before being allowed to make use of its sails, and would be escorted by Imperial galleys across Aran Bay. She noticed a good number of Marines on the ship. roughly 70. Clearly, the Dojal heading C was not a safe place to be. Her stallion stepped onto the platform that was basically an elevator to lower the horses down below deck. A grizzled stablehand asked if this horse was one of the High Fist's new purchases. Manala only nodded. The man said it was a magnificent animal, and the High Fist had an impeccable eye. She thought the High Fist didn't have much else worth mentioning. The bastard was making a show of his fleeing, and when he does leave, he'll have a host of warships to protect him. She wondered what kind of mess they had left Keneb in. She remembered Kalam telling them to get out of Aaron. She had said the same thing to Sel before. She said goodbye to them. Now Keneb was attached to the city garrison and wasn't going anywhere. She suspected she'd never see any of them again. All just to chase a man she hardly knew. A man she didn't even know if she really liked, even though she knew she was old enough to know better.
The cool thing that I thought about this section was in the first section when Kalam is observing the Malazan transport, like he's essentially seeing Manala load these horses up. He doesn't know it.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that I had. I know that you had a comment, which I feel the same about, but I will let you have the floor.
Sure. Yeah, it's just I feel like, so far we haven't seen a ton of this type of emotion in either of the books, but it seems like we're getting a little bit of a love story with this. Maybe with Manala chasing after Kalam. She says she doesn't really know if she likes him, but would you really chase after him if you didn't, though? But even, with how dark everything is, with the situations that these people are going through, the heart still wants what the heart wants. So it's kind of nice to see that. Maybe it'll, I don't know. Part of me just wonders if it's going to get darker somehow, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
I'm sure Manala's going to die. Like, that's the only way that I feel like this is a setup for that. I don't know. I think it would be cool if she comes like a long journeyed companion to Kalam.
Yeah. At the same time, like, I don't know if I see something like that happening, but maybe it will.
Yeah, who knows? I feel like she'll become a close companion, or she'll die, or she'll go somewhere else and we won't know.
There's only a few possibilities there, isn't there?
Right. Or maybe she's Shaik Reborn.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Nice little short section. It was fun to read.
For sure. Ready for your next one?
All right. This one's a little bit longer, but there's a lot of things that happen. Can I really write 4 pages on this? Damn. All right. Well, here we go. The southern horizon ran a thin gray green vein that wavered in the streams of heat rising from the road. The land was barren and studded with stones, except for the Imperial Road and a small trader's track that branched off from that Imperial Road. Train sat at the crossroads and watched the southeast coast. The coast in that direction and the holy city of Ubard. The skyline in that direction was covered in smoke. Duiker sat in his saddle and, like the others, listened to Captain Solmar speak. Solmar was explaining to Coltane that there was no choice but to hear the nobles out. It is them and the refugees that are suffering the most. Their rations are starvation level, and yes, there will be water at the Vathar River, but what about after that? Captain Lull could be heard grunting his contempt. Bolt runs his fingers through his beard and tells Lull that Sormo has said that the spirits have sensed nothing, but they are still a good distance away, and it could be that the spirits there are buried deep down. At least Sormo has said. Duiker glanced at Sormo. Sormo sat on his horse, but his face was covered beneath his hood's shadow. Nil and Nether were still recovering from their ordeal at Geller Ridge and hadn't emerged from the wagon. Duiker heard Captain Solmar pleading with the Fist about using Ubard, as its walls were a better defense than the hillless terrain. It had the best tactical advantage. Bolt barked, "Captain," to get him to silence. Salmar did shut up, but his lips thinned in frustration. Duiker shudders and then wonders to himself, what has gotten Salmar wearing so thin? He guesses that this doesn't happen when he's sipping wine with the nobles. Coltane did not take Solmar seriously. In fact, like other situations, he's meeting it with that cold indifference. It worked well for the fist, but for Solmar, it seemed to fuel his confidence. Solmar started talking. His next point was that this wasn't just a military concern, and that there was a civil element to it. Before he could continue, Captain Lull interrupts to ask Bolt to promote him so he could whip this dog. Otherwise, a word with Solmar in private. Solmar silently sneered. Coltane finally spoke and said that there was no civil element to it. He explains that Ubard would be a fatal trap if they retook it. Assailed from the land and the sea, they would never hold. Coltane said that as his last task, Salmar can relay that to the nobles. Salmar is in complete disbelief. He tells the fist that he cannot do that. Coltane's head swung around to look at the captain. Duiker at this point wondered if the captain had finally gotten to the fist. Salmar continued to say that he was commissioned by the High Fist, and based on that, it was within his rights to ask for adjudication. He explains that it's always been a strength of the Malazan army to have the floor to speak their minds, regardless of what is commanded. Salmar interjects that they would still obey orders, but explains that he has the right to have his position recorded, as stated. Silence ensued, but Bolt swung in his saddle to face the historian. Bolt asked Duiker if he understood any of that. Duiker replied that he did as well as you, uncle. Bolt asks if his position will be noted. Duiker said aye. Bolt then asked if adjudication requires a high fist. Duiker nods in agreement. Bolt then asked where the nearest high fist was. Duiker responded by saying Aaron. Bolt nodded thoughtfully and then said that in order to resolve this issue, they must make haste to Aaron. The uncle turned to face Solmar and asked if the views of the nobles are to take precedent over the fate of Solmar's career. Solmar didn't even answer this question and continued on to plead for going to Ubard. His next point was that it would allow Admiral Nock's fleet some relief. Bolt replied that Nock's fleet was still in Aaron. Solmar agreed, but stated that once word traveled to them being in Ubard, then the obvious course would be clear. Bolt asked if Solmar meant that Nock would relieve them. Frowning, he tells the captain that he's confused, because the High Fist holds his armies in Aaron and commands the whole Seven Cities fleet, but neither have moved in months. The High Fist has had many opportunities to send us relief and hasn't. Solmar tells Bolt that he wasn't talking about the High Fist. He was talking about Admiral Nock. Bolt interrupts Solmar to explain that Nock is dead, sick, or in a dungeon. Otherwise, Nock would have left already. One man holds Aaron, and we are to put our lives in his hands? Solmar's expression soured, and as he put on his riding gloves, he said in either choice, he has to put his life in the High Fist's hands. And it seems like he's no longer allowed to speak his mind. Coltane said that he could, but he's still a soldier of the 7th. Solmar understood and said that these are trying times. He quickly turned to Duiker and asked the historian what his thoughts were on all of this. Duiker thought for a moment and then cleared his throat. Duiker states that the greatest threat was Rouleau's army, and the victory at Geller Ridge has provided us time to lick our wounds. Solmar scoffs and says that they have barely had any time, and that they've been pushing twice as hard since Geller Ridge. Duiker agrees to the statement, but says that it is Corbeau Dom that now chases them. He was once a fist and a very able commander and tactician. Rouleau was a mage and relied on sheer numbers to try and overwhelm us. Corbeau won't be as foolish, and it's important that they reach the river Vathar before Dom does. It's at this point Solmar makes his point about taking Ubard, as it would be unexpected to Dom. Duiker then explains from a non-tactical point of view that the triumph would be short-lived, as they would have 2 days to prepare the defenses. It would be an absolute suicide. Bolt shifts in his saddle and then asks Sormo where the dog went that has adopted the warlock, the one called Bent. He wants to ask the dog its opinion on the matter of Ubard. Sormo said that if Uncle really wishes to know, the dog is hiding in the tall grass not 7 paces from him. All of them turned to try and locate the dog. Duiker swung around on the road to watch the train stretch north on the Imperial Road. The train itself was over 1 Imperial League long. Coltane announced that the meeting was over. Bolt said for the captains to report to their companies as they marched for the Vathar River. Little was open for debate during that command meeting. Duiker felt a wave of pity for Solmar as he realized the amount of pressure he might be under with the other nobles. Being that Solmar was noble-born himself, this realization makes Duiker recall something Kellenvet had said during the first cleansing and restructuring of the military early in his reign. 1 set of rules and 1 ruler. His and Dasim Ultor's imposition of merit caused a struggle for control amongst the hierarchies of the army and navy commanders. Lasine spilled blood on the palace steps at the bidding of her claw. She would have learned from that lesson, but there was a second call, but it was too late. Captain Lull interrupted his thoughts, asking the historian to follow him as it's an official request. Duiker tells the captain, okay, and to ride on then. Lull asks how Corporal List was doing as they made their way to Lull's company. Duiker frowned. List had taken a vicious wound at Geller Ridge. The historian explained to Lull that they are facing issues with the healers, as they've drawn too much of their warrens, and they themselves are falling apart. Lull is seen pulling his eye patch away from his face. He tells the historian that he's not alone in that. Duiker thought to himself that if the chain of dogs had a face, it would be Lull's. They made their way through the column of soldiers. The spirits of the soldiers seemed to be high, but slowly waning as the victory of battle wore off. Lull, after some time, asked Duiker if he knew about this forest beyond the river. Duiker explains that it was cedar, and that the trees used to occupy both sides of the river, but now just south because no one bothered to replant the trees. Duiker explained that they'll have about a week worth of travel through the forest that remained upriver. Duiker has a thought to himself about whether Coltane would defend the train in a forest where ambushes could come out of nowhere. They continued on riding through the wagons with the wounded on them. The air smelled foul here. Off to their left, the cattle and livestock grazed. Duiker found himself thinking about the similarities to the livestock and himself. The animals had matched them step for step. Month after month of suffering, that was one curse they all shared, the will to live. Duiker heard Lull suddenly say that the horse's blood had burned black in its veins. Duiker knew he didn't need to ask which horse the captain was talking about. Lull went on to say that Nil and Nether hands were stained black and that they were marked forevermore. Duiker thought to himself that so was he. He thought of the 2 warlocks fetally curled up inside a wagon, there in the midst of their silent kin. His thoughts continued to that of the Wiccans, knowing that the gift of power is never free, and that they do not envy those chosen to hold power, for power is never a game. Softly, Duiker heard Lull saying that he himself was falling into the historian's silences. Lull admits that he finds himself impatient for Corporal O'Dam, and that he can no longer see what Coltane sees. The historian asks Lull if he cannot see what the Fifth sees anymore. Dismay showed on the limited features of the captain. Duiker admits that he fears that Coltane's silences no longer speak of victory. Lull comments that this was to match the historian's own silences. Duiker simply shrugged, but inside his head he thinks about an entire continent pursuing them, and how they shouldn't have lived this long. He cannot let himself be taken into anything further than that image. Lull sees Duiker lost in thought and says that they should stop thinking, because they were well past that point, and they were simply just existing. They approached Lull's company. In the midst of the 7th Infantry stood a group of 50 men and women. As Lull and Duiker approached, heads turned their way, and a sergeant could be heard belting a command to stand at attention. Lull gets down from his mount and starts to address the people that were once servants to the nobles. He started off his speech to the servants, and after a few words to them, he nodded to his sergeant. The sergeant and the seventh started handing out uniforms for the former servants. After uniforms were handed out, Lull explains that the nobles caught Coltane a chest of gold, had brought Coltane a chest of gold. Lull continued on to say that the nobles were growing weary of wiping their own asses. The former servants were a choir of laughter. Lull waited for the laughter to die before saying that the fist turned his back on them and that the fist knew how to gauge value. Lull finished off his heartwarming speech by telling them all that they are not servants anymore, but soldiers of the seventh. Lull swung to his sergeant and told him to assign these soldiers. Duiker watched in silence as he observed the ritual of uniforms being handed out to men and women. Duiker thought to himself that they will stand and stand well. Lull joined him at his side and told the historian that as servants, they might have survived, sold to other noble families. As soldiers, though, they will die. Can you hear this silence, historian? Do you know what it signifies? I think you do. Duiker thought to himself that with all they do, Hood smiles. Right of this. Duiker looked at Lull and saw a broken man.
Nice job on that.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that summary. Lots of stuff, man. Lots of stuff.
Yes.
The first thing that I had was Duiker glancing at Sormo, and Sormo's face was covered beneath his hood's shadow. And Duiker, in his observations of Sormo, could see that the warlock's hands were like trembling. And I'm sure that this is due to exhaustion, stress or anxiety. And I wonder if it's simply the amount of warlocks that he has left. Because according to Duiker, there are 3 warlocks left, and 2 of them are either dead or barely able to walk. And Sormo himself seems to be aging 10 years for every week they are out there. So I wonder if like Duiker is alluding to Sormo dying, as he was the oldest of the warlocks before his soul was reincarnated into a small boy. I don't know if you recall that. I'm wondering if Duiker is kind of on this verge of like, we're going to be out of warlock soon. You know?
If that's the case, it's going to be tough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like that's some very elusive foreshadowing, and where that goes and what that means, I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I mean, I feel like if they're going to be out of warlocks, it's going to be kind of game over then. It's not going to be looking real good.
Well, I mean, it doesn't even seem like there's any spirits south of the river anyway. But, you know, I'm just assuming that they can't reach them because they're of something we'll read in one of these next sections. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Something that just caught my attention. The other thing that I thought was cool was Duiker's kind of like, you know, talking to us as a reader more so than anyone else about the indifference that Coltane usually has around these types of situations that Coltane is known for. But for Solmar, it seemed to fuel his confidence. And I really like this line. And it's not how it's said in the book, the way I summarized it. This is definitely my simplified version of the wondrous words that were used. The indifference works for Coltane as it allows him to focus on the plan ahead. However, for Solmar, with Coltane not responding, it's giving the captain a false sense of being listened to, or at least silently acknowledged, which just illustrates the diversity between these two and how they were likely raised, right? Like poor versus noble, and the mindset that comes along with that upbringing. I thought that was just pure genius, you know?
That's a nice pickup. I wouldn't have got that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool way of showing, you know, the differences between these two guys.
I like that.
And then when Bolt turns to the historian and asks his like Solmar's position would be noted, and Duiker's like, yeah, it will. and that adjudication requires a high fist. Duiker's like, yep. And then Bolt asked where the nearest high fist was, and Duiker was like, Aaron. And then Bolt nodded and was like, oh, well, in order to resolve the issue, we must make haste to Aaron. And then Bolt turns to Solmar and asks if the nobles issue are more of a precedent over your career. And I fucking loved this interaction. And Duiker is totally playing along because he sees what Bolt is getting at. But just a drop of the mic moment, and one of my top dialogues so far, just a fuck you in their face response. Like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you want to go to Ubard? Okay, well, sorry, your ass is out. Like, you can make telling the nobles that they suck ass your last duty. And then now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, 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 and they just kind of like twist things on him. And I just thought it was genius. And I guess moving on, I think it's really cool how perceptive Bolt is. And I'm sure, Coltane and Bolt are, very much talking about similar things. And they mentioned that Nock is dead, sick, or in a dungeon. And I feel like we got confirmation of what happened to Nock. But these guys clearly don't know. Based upon Nock's inaction and Pormqual's inaction, they're able to deduce that they're not going to get help.
I mean, that's got to be kind of a shitty feeling, like just knowing you're not going to get help. Like you're just out there on your own.
Right. Yeah, it is a shitty feeling. And I can understand where Solmar is coming about taking back Ubard, but I totally get that it's suicide, which goes back to our earlier conversation about, the sea, the soul hand. Is that not, that's not what it's, is it? What is it? Fuck. I forgot the sea already.
So Jal hating.
That's the bay that Aaron could cut across to get to Ubard. But the like main sea, I forget what it's called already. The Solhan, Salon, I don't remember.
Sahul.
Huh?
Sahul?
Yes, thank you,
S-A-A.
Sahul. And yeah, okay. Well, I feel like this is a little bit confirmation that the Sahul, is definitely getting hotter with the rebellion. That they would attack Ubard once they heard word that there were Malazans in the city as well. And then another big, like, absolutely hilarious moment is Bolt is just going to such extreme lengths to rub this over Solmar's face. Because after Sormo tells Bolt where Bent the dog is, the warlock explained that the dog won't have much an opinion on the matter. Bolt responded to that by saying he was a good soldier. So it was just absolutely hilarious because he asks Sormo if we could get the opinion of the dog. Sormo says, well, there isn't really that much of an opinion. And then Bolt responds, well, that's a good soldier. He's just...
Yeah, I said something to the effect of like, he goes where you tell him or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it was worded.
It was just, Bolt is just like shitting all over Sormo, and it's just genius.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I did enjoy that too.
And then another thing that I thought was a really cool kind of reference to some Gardens of the Moon material is that Duiker has a thought that Lysine should have learned from the lessons of Kellenved because there was a second call, but it came too late. So is Duiker saying that it took her too long to start eliminating those that were loyal to Kellenved? And I feel like this is what is the second call, is the reason why the bridge burners were cast out. And when Tayshrin sabotaged the assault on Moonspawn and Gardens of the Moon, I guess I'm just not too sure what the too late part really means, but I just thought it was really cool insight.
Yeah. Again, I love hearing all the stuff you pick up on.
Sorry
for what?
I don't know. Bringing up stuff that you're not expecting.
No, it's not that I'm not expecting it. It's just that I didn't piece it together, and I wouldn't have if you didn't.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, fair enough. All right then.
So nothing you need to be sorry for. Like, keep doing it.
Okay, cool. Well then, I'm gonna keep doing. I'm just gonna keep going down these things.
Sounds good.
Lol, when they're kind of talking about like the healers and how they were facing issues, Lowell pulls his eye patch away and explains that he's not alone in some of the healers falling apart from over accessing their warrens, and it was just because Lowell himself had almost succumbed to a septic infection. It was cool. I don't know why. It's just I like that. We kind of talked about the cedar trees. Uh, the only thing that I would add about the forest of Athar Forest is that they are the source of Ubard's fame. So it sounds like Ubard is known for building well-crafted ships and boats and stuff because they had a huge forest to take from, which never got replanted.
Yeah, maybe they should have. Then they could keep building boats and whatever else.
Right, yeah. And then kind of after the meeting was adjourned at the crossroads, and Lowell is taking Duiker to, his company, they kind of observe all these different sections of the train on their way back, and Duiker kind of finds himself thinking about the similarities between the livestock and himself. And month after month of suffering, that was one curse they all shared, and that was the will to live. And I can't help but think that Duiker is just on this dark train and he cannot get out of his own head. But I really enjoy his abstract thoughts. I think part of that was he mentions that Hood grants the gifts of knowing when you're going to die to pretty much any living thing, and how cruel that was.
Yeah, it's not very comforting.
Mm-mm. No, but yeah, it was just a really cool thought, and I really dug it. The other thing that I thought was really cool was the whole Nil and Nether's hands were like stained black, and Lol explains that they were marked forevermore. Duker thought to himself that he was as well, but I'm not sure how this relates to Nil and Nether being marked, and if maybe I've missed something completely. Like, can you see why Duiker is marked? Is it just the imagery that he had of this horse just being decimated from the inside out? Or, like, what do you think he's referring there?
Maybe just more so the fact that he's a witness to all this, right? And he's tasked with writing it down, or will be at some point. Once they get through it, because I don't feel like we ever really see him actively writing, do we?
No, not at all.
So I think it's probably, to me, it's just more so that he's seeing all these horrible things, and
He has to recall them.
he's gonna have to recall them and write them down, which he's gonna have to use his hands for, right?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Okay, I'll take that.
That's
That
that's
works.
all I got for it.
Works for me. I'll take it. I couldn't associate anything there because I'm like, maybe I was just thinking too simplistically, like, how is he marked physically, But
I think it must be more of like a mental thing. I mean, yeah, they've got their battle wounds, on their hands because of this, and he's more got, I guess, he's gonna have, I guess, maybe like PTSD about it or something. I don't know if maybe that's exactly what it's gonna be, but he's gonna have the memories are gonna hit him maybe differently than the rest of them.
right,
So,
yeah,
especially since he's got to be, objective about it.
that's fair. I'll take that. I like that response. Thanks,
All
dude.
I try to sound smart sometimes.
I feel like you sound smart the majority of the time. I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, thank you.
It's me that sounds ridiculous. I mean, who else can jump into a podcast at the last 8 minutes and then just destroy it?
Well,
So
I know you can.
well, see, there you go. Not smart.
It wasn't that you're not smart.
I
You
know.
are.
I'm just goofy. Um, Oh wow. Moving on. The other thing that I thought was really cool and abstract is when Duiker is thinking about Nil and Nether curled up inside the wagon. He says they're in the midst of their silent kin. And I just thought that this was super eerie and on a whole nother level because does that mean like with their fallen warlocks or just the spirit of the land?
I don't know, I guess.
Like, yeah, I don't know what to make it of either. I just thought that it was kind of brutal and pretty dark, which I like that shit. So
Yeah, definitely is.
the last thing that I had in this section is at the very end when he's like, "Can you hear the silence, historian? Do you know what it signifies? I think that you do." Is Lull getting at the price of freedom? It doesn't sound like he thinks it's worth it. But to the enslaved, right, like the ones that were servants, I'm sure that they think they have a fighting chance because they got their freedom. But to Lull and Duiker, they know things won't turn out well with all they have coming down their alley. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it was just really cool to think about. These servants are have been freed from the nobles. The nobles are struggling to wipe their own asses, which I think is just kind of poetic justice. But at the end of the day, Lull and Duiker are like, I almost feel bad for these guys because they would have lived on, just unfortunately being sold between nobles and nobles and not dying as to all that's coming down at them right now. You know,
I don't. I mean, do you think they really would have survived? I don't know. I think they probably would have just been killed anyways.
I mean, maybe, but I think that the nobles and their servants would have found a way to live with the enemy.
I
They're only
guess
going
I,
to
I
do.
feel differently on that.
You don't think that they would have tried to have served their own interests, which is to not die?
Well, I don't think they wanted to. I just think that the apocalypse and this army that's tracking them down probably is just gonna they're just gonna kill everybody. They're not. I don't think they would have just left the nobles alive. They want them dead. Maybe they'd keep the slaves alive. I don't know, but I feel like more than likely they'd probably just kill everything if they were given the chance.
I guess that's a good point. Okay, all right.
But you remember a while back though, I questioned like why have they not drafted these people to fight yet? And now they finally did it. So
You did call it.
I don't think the numbers. I mean,
The
I don't know. I think these slaves. I don't know how they view it, but I mean, this is why I feel like they probably would have been killed whether they're slaves or fighting. But if you're staring down that, I guess I'd rather die fighting than
Right,
get slaughtered, with no weapon in my hand, just getting cut down.
right. And I think that's what Lull and Duiker are kind of having a conversation about at the end. And Duiker seeing that he sees a broken man in Lull, because they no longer believe that they can make this work. They are questioning the silences of Coltane as doubt and no longer of winning. You know what I mean? But to the enslaved, right? They have a new reason to fight. They have that energy that Lull and Duiker don't have anymore. So I think that it's supposed to just kind of be this like subtle way of keeping hope alive, and no one's really realizing that yet. I don't know.
The only thing I would change with what you said is I don't think it's so much about winning as it is just about
Surviving.
living and surviving. Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just it's very like very surreal thoughts, and who can blame them? I mean, they're not even halfway to Aaron yet, and everybody is just doubting whether they're going to survive or not, you know? But to the enslaved, this is like getting promoted at McDonald's, you know? Like, I no longer have to work my shitty job. I can do something better. I don't know how else to relate that, but that's just kind of where my thought is going.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard, I think, because I don't know that they're going to necessarily bring like a new life to the fight or anything, because I mean, they're starving just like anybody else. There's not a lot of energy to be had there. It's just now I think there's just more bodies to throw at the people, the army that's chasing them.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you how are you going to train these guys when you're already running, you're already starving? So I mean, these people aren't soldiers; they're servants. They're not going to be real strong. We do know that they at what was the Sakala, they held, they gave them some shields and had them hold the line. They did that, but that was, a month ago at this point, or months ago, when they were probably stronger. So now they're worn down like everybody else. Well, it does say that there was something that said that they were strong, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
I'm not sure
Because
what but
there was something where they talked about, that they were, even though they might have been older, there were some that were like 40 or whatever, but that they had, you know, been products of hard labor. They were strong, but I'd have to think you're going to be breaking down here pretty quick if you're not already.
I guess I'm just what I'm trying to convey is that despite the environment and the awareness of the soldiers of the Seventh and the captains and the Historian and Coltane and Bolt, um, these guys have like a renewed sense of spirit because they're free from the life that they lived. But I think the abstract part to do like Lull and Duiker's perspective is that like they're not really free at all. They're just gonna die. But to
Yeah.
these servants, there's this like renewed energy because they're no longer they have control over their life. They have control whether they live or die. They can go down swinging, is I think kind of where I'm going with that.
Sure. I got you. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
I think that feeling will probably be short lived until they get thrown into battle and they're like, well,
oh
fuck.
Yeah.
I'd rather be getting whipped in the back than getting my feet chopped off or, stabbed.
I don't know, man. After a lifetime of that, and I'm assuming it's chattel slavery too, right? Like if you're enslaved and you bear children, that they are also enslaved as well. They're not free. They are
right.
born to serve these nobles, which I would take death if I was born into enslavement. I would choose to fight because I have a small chance of surviving instead of living this life where I don't have any control over my
small
own.
chance is still a chance, right?
Right. Baby steps are still movement.
That's a good way to put it.
But anyway, that's all my thoughts around this section. I thought it was really cool. I loved the dynamics between Bolt, Coltane, Duiker, Lull, and Solmar. So yeah, it was cool. And then just to kind of see Lull accepting these servants as like one of the Seventh, and as well as just some transition between the different parts of the train between the meeting and Lull's company. So yeah, it was cool. I really enjoyed summarizing that for some reason.
Well, good. That was a long one. Glad you enjoyed
it. But anyway, I'm cool if you're cool.
I think I'm pretty cool. I think you're pretty cool. But if you want me to move on, I can do that too.
Please.
All right. On Geller Ridge, Corporal List had jumped off the side of an earthen ramp into the ditch to avoid a volley of arrows. Upon landing, a javelin sticking up in the dirt had pierced his foot, right through his boot, and foot by the big toe and the one next to it. It wasn't a large wound, but piercing wounds were the worst. They could lead to a fever that could and would seize joints, including the jaw, making it impossible to open one's mouth, slowly dying by thirst or starvation. Though the Wiccan horsewives were experienced in treating these types of injuries, they had all but run out of supplies. There was only one course of treatment, burning the wound, and it had to be thorough. Hours after the battle at the ridge, the air was ripe with the smell of cooked meat. Duiker found List hobbling around in a circle with a determined look on his face. He told Duiker he could still ride, but only for an hour or so at a time. The foot goes numb, and that's when the infection could return. Only a few days ago, Duiker walked along the stretcher that carried List. He was certain he was dying at that point of time. During the march, a horsewife checked on List, looking him over with concern. Duiker said it didn't look good. She hesitated at first, but then she drew out what looked like a lump of moldy bread. As the woman fastened it to List's foot, he said that this must be a joke, and that he'd soon be able to rejoin the ranks. List said he needed to tell Duiker something. While he was in fever, it showed him visions of what lay ahead. Duiker said sometimes that happens. Continuing on, List said that a god's hand had reached out from the darkness and grabbed his soul, dragging it forward in time, days and weeks ahead. The land south of Vathar is a land of old truths. Duiker asked what he meant by old truths. List said something terrible happened there long ago. So long ago that the land feels lifeless. He asked about the god's hand, if he saw it. List said no, but he felt it. The fingers were long, too long, with too many joints. Sometimes he feels the grip like a ghost, and he shivers in its clutches. Duiker asked if it was similar to the ancient slaughter that took place at the Sakala crossing. List said no, this was much older than that. Shouts rose up as the train was ready to move again. Duiker said he would walk alongside List's stretcher. He wanted every detail of his vision. List said they may only be a fever dream. Duiker said that is a possibility, but he didn't believe that, and he knew List didn't either. Duiker thought, for whatever reason, List had been chosen for an elder vision, and out of the darkness came the cold hand of a Jaghut.
I liked this section.
Yeah, definitely some good visuals there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Smelling cooked meat, or it's interesting that he says meat instead of flesh, I thought, but
Yeah,
I'm sure he wasn't the only one being cauterized.
no, probably not. What do you think of this God's hand stuff and Elder Vision and Cold Hand of a Jaghut? Like,
Man, I don't know. I know you answered it here in our notes on the side, but I was trying to remember who had the Elder Vision in Gardens of the Boon, and I thought it was Krupp, and you had confirmed that. But his was with Krull, correct?
right.
So, yeah, I don't know what it. I guess I'm not sure what to make of it, what it might mean. Probably nothing good. Does it relate to the vision that Duiker had or was a part of, where that was a Jaghut that was ripped apart in the ice, right?
Right. Yeah.
Does it relate to that, or is it something else? I don't know.
I don't think it relates to that, honestly. And I mean, we can maybe go back, but I feel like this has something to do with the Jade Hand. Because didn't it have multiple joints?
I do not remember.
Okay. I could be wrong on that one. But I feel like. So you remember how Iscarol Poost was talking to. I don't remember. I think it was probably Mappo about the chain of dogs being a Shadowborn prophecy.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that is tying into List kind of explaining to Duiker that what happened here long ago was like so terrible that the land feels lifeless, which is kind of an explanation as to why Sormo and the other warlocks can't really sense any spirits down there. I guess that's what I'm connecting there. But I feel like something happens with the chain of dogs and this land down here. But like I said, I almost feel like this we keep getting this hand, like hands are like another big focal point in this book. And I almost kind of feel like the mysterious ancient hand is the Jaghut.
Do you think this has to do with Icarium?
No, maybe a little bit.
Because, I mean, we find out he did some pretty terrible shit here in a section or two.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's a part of his warpath. I don't know. It's just kind of thinking right now. That's not a thought I had before. It just kind of was coming to me. I don't know. Maybe.
But he's not a full-blood Jaghut. He's half Jag and half something else. Which, if you think about Hebrick, right? He's got one hand that is one thing and then another hand that's another. So
True.
there's so many like similarities, but nothing conclusive yet. And like I don't know what to make of it, but I feel like this has something to do with whatever Poost was talking about. What we're getting to. Maybe they do end up releasing the spirits there, and that's helping Shadow Throne in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not getting any easier, is it?
Mm-mm. It's like I said a couple episodes ago, this is the part that I absolutely hate. Is like there's so much just juicy shit, and like all I want to do is just keep reading and reading and reading and reading until like I'm actually satisfied. More of this kind of stuff comes up in other sections too. So I think that something is going on with Hands, Jaghut, and history and Icarium.
Maybe a Carium.
Yeah. Anyway, those are the only thoughts that I had for that section. I don't know if you had other ones as well, but
No, I just the I didn't summarize much of it here, but just the description that he's talking about when he's going through, in this fever dream was really cool. Just being pulled through time was really kind of neat.
yeah, it is really cool. Which that's the part that I think you're probably picking up on Icarium. There is just the whole being moved through time.
Well, and he says how old this was and what's revealed here later it is kind of what's making me think maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah, cool. Well, we can talk about that more when we get to it.
Sure,
All right. I don't know if you're ready, but I'm ready. If you want to
I
move.
am ready.
Cool. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
go for it, man. I'm ready.
All right. And here comes what we were not expecting. Pelazin sat rocking back and forth. Hebrick and the giant warrior were arguing about her, prophecies, and ill chance. Mutual contempt bubbled between them, born the instant the two met. The other one, Leoman, crouched nearby. He held the book close to him, waiting to see if she was Shaik reborn. Felsen has a thought about being reborn, renewed, delivered by the whirlwind goddess, who waits as Leoman waits for Felsen, hinge of the world. Felsen smiled at this thought. Felsen was still rocking back and forth as memories returned to her of Culp and Bowden's deaths. Deaths that had already started to fleet in her mind. She thought to herself that grief rapes the mind. She questioned herself as if she should allow herself to feel this grief. She decided within herself to feel nothing, pain or grief. Stones grated near her, and she could sense it was Hebrick approaching. He was silent, as if attempting to invade her silence. She thought one word, and that was rape. A moment later, he spoke. He told her that they want to get moving, and they are both far gone. The oasis or Shaik's campment is a long walk. He explained that there's water along the way, but little for food. The Toblakai will hunt, but game has been scarce because of the soul taken into Ivers. Hebrick speculates that whether she opens the book or not, they should move. Felsen said nothing. She just kept rocking. Hebrick cleared his throat and explained to Felsen that as much as he hates the notions of accepting the offer to become Shaik, we need these two, and the Oasis. They know Raraku and our best chance for surviving. This caused Felsen to think of the word surviving. Hebrick continued on, speaking about how he's acquired senses that make his blindness less of an issue, and with his hands being reborn, nonetheless, he is not enough to guard her. Felsen continues to rock and again focuses on the word surviving. Hebrick tells her to wake the fuck up, as she's got decisions to make. Felsen asks Hebrick if Shaik drew her blade against the Empire. Hebrick started to respond and only got out that it was a foolish gesture. Felsen continued to say that Shaik would face the Empress, sending her armies into a blood-filled abyss. Hebrick tries to explain to Felsen that history recounts similar rebellions, and it is not but an echo. It's all glamour and righteousness. Felazin interrupts him again and says, who cares about righteousness? And that the Empress needs to answer Shaik's rebellion. Hebrick gave her a simple eye. Felazin put it together, with the help of Hebrick filling in the gaps, that an army would be dispatched from Quan Tali. Felazin rose to her feet. Leomin was staring at her. She has a quick thought about Leomin and how there was wit in those cold, dark eyes. She said, to Shaik's encampment. Leomin looked down at the book and then back at her. Felazin told him that the whirlwind could wait before releasing her fury. She saw a praise appear on Leomin's face. Hebrick questioned Felazin if she knew what she was doing. She cut him off by saying that she knew better than him and to keep quiet. Hebrick suggests that they part ways. She swung to him and told him no, and that she still has a need for him. Hebrick asks as her conscience? If that was the case, he would be a poor choice. Inside Felazin's head, she agreed, and that she would be better for it. Ooh.
So when I first read this part of the chapter, I had to go back and read it again because I was like, when the fuck did Hebrick and Felazin come to be with Leomin and Toblakai? And it took me, I had to read it like 2 or 3 times before I was like, holy fuck, that's who was coming to the body, to Shaik's body at the end of the last chapter. It wasn't Apsalar and her father. And I was like, oh my God, like it just totally caught me off guard, and I just was not expecting it at all.
Yeah, I wasn't either. But then, we had our conversation about that, and you shared that with me, and I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. So you pretty much did all the hard work for me. I didn't struggle as hard because you had already told me.
Well, you had read it though, right?
Right, yeah.
I didn't spoil it for you.
No, you didn't spoil anything. You never spoil anything.
I've been close like once or twice.
This is news to me.
I think there was one time where I don't even remember what it was. It was a couple chapters ago. It was pretty recent.
Gotcha. I don't remember it. I'm not mad.
I don't think it would have been anything major, but
gotcha.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was either. But
oh well. The first thing that I had here is Felazin. She was smiling at the thought of her being the hinge of the world, and I feel like she's smiling because this whole journey, she has thoughts about being drained, exhausted, and no more energy. So the thought of her being renewed is really motivating Felazin to contemplate taking Shaik's place. And I'm sure this isn't the only motivation, as we'll find out later.
No, I mean, if she still wants revenge on Tavor, like, what better way to go about it than by being, this whirlwind goddess, I guess.
Right. Which I'll talk about later when we read that section, but I have a thought about Felazin becoming Shaik.
All right.
The other thing that I thought was really cool was she questioned herself and if she would allow herself to feel the grief for Culp and Bowden. And she's not even allowing herself to mourn or grieve. And I feel like before she was operating off of pure emotion, but now she seems to be calculating strategically what she's allowed to be emotional about. And is this just her way of building to be Shaik Reborn? Like, think about it, right? Like, all of Felazin up to this point has just been, like, defensive outrage or lashing out at people. And now it's gotten to the point where she's strategic about what she wants to be emotional about.
It's got to be hard. Got to be cold sometimes.
So feel like I have to take back my statement in the previous section about Felazin growing. I feel like she's digressing at this point again. And I feel like she's motivated because now she's closer to obtaining her goal, whereas something she didn't expect. But I feel like it's too good to be true.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be some sort of catch. Like, it's probably not going to be what she's like expecting it to be. Like, it's not going to be just that easy. For sure, there's going to be some sort of catch.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, we already talked about Tavor, and she must be in command of this army from Quantali, which we got a little bit of some mention in the first section when Kalam is talking to the sailor. So it looks like that boat that he was on, the Ragstopper, was loading up some weapons for Tavor's fleet.
Probably. I mean, you're gonna fight. You're gonna need weapons, so
Right. Yeah.
they'll get used somehow,
Eh,
somewhere.
but it looks like Fellowsen is seeing her way to get her river of blood. Like she's seeing red and not contemplating the consequences here.
Well, I mean, sometimes when you're a kid, you just have a single track mind. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing will kind of take over your thoughts. So,
Yeah. I mean, part of it is really cool because like I kind of part of me wants Fellowsen to get just all of this bloodlust for her sister, but at the end of the day, I feel like Opan is not on her side. I feel like Opan is completely against whatever Fellowsen wants.
you're not gonna have no luck, huh?
Right.
Well, I mean, if she's a goddess, how much luck does she need?
But you do realize that if she becomes Shaik, then your theory about her dying is probably not right.
Probably, but I mean, hey, they've said it before. You can still kill a god.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we'll see. I do wonder if this is going to be like almost like a double cross. Is it another fake out? Like, is it just looking like Fellowsen is going to be Shaik, but is it somehow still going to be Apsalar? I don't know how much I believe that, but part of me thinks about it.
Yeah. And we could talk about it when it comes up in, I think, my next section. Um, I've been thinking about it a lot as well, and
All right.
really excited to fucking move on. Hopefully, some answers will be revealed in this next chapter, but I guess who knows? So
Right. Well, you ready for me to continue?
let's do it.
All right. The ancient path showed signs of once being a road, twisting and turning through the land. Cobbles littered the path where the wind had dug them up. The Toblakai scouted ahead, while behind them, Leomin, Fellowsen, and Heberick hung back, hardly talking. Leomin had wasted away so much that Fellowsen thought him a ghost. She looked behind at Heberick. He was smiling. She asked if something was funny. He said the road was crowded. She asked if it was the same ghosts as in the city. He shook his head no and said these were not as old. These memories were from after the First Empire. Leomin stopped walking and looked back at Heberick. He smiled at Leomin and said Rariku is showing him its secrets. Leomin asked why. Heberick asked if the fact it was happening made him nervous. Heberick thought to himself that it should. Leomin looked to Fellowsen and asked what this man was to her. She thought to herself that she didn't know. When she spoke, she said he was her companion, her historian, and he was extremely valuable to her since she was going to make Rariku her home. Leomin told her that Rariku's secrets were not for him, not for Heberick to possess. He had stolen them as any other raider would have done. If she desires Rariku's secrets, she should look within herself. She nearly laughed, but knew if she did, how bitter it sounded would scare even her. Something continued on even as the heat increased. I don't know. Clearly, I typed the wrong word there. I don't know what I meant. The Toblakai waited for them ahead in a place where the road had caved in, creating large dark holes in the road. Heberick said it was an aqueduct beneath the road. While it was only a trickle now, it used to be a torrent. The Toblakai gave it a nasty sneer as Heberick spoke. Leomin took the water skins and lowered himself into the hole. Heberick apologized to the Toblakai with the secret name, but he imagined he would have had a hell of a time getting his fat-ass head through the cave. The giant gave a smile, showing his filed teeth, and said that he collects tokens of those he kills. They are on his belt, and one day he will have his token from Heberick. Fellowsen told him that he meant his ears. Heberick knew what the Toblakai was talking about. There were tortured souls in his shadow. Every man, woman, and child he had killed. Heberick asked Toblakai if the children begged for their lives. Did they cry for their mothers? He said no more than the grown men did. Fellison noted that he looked paler, and it wasn't because of killing children. It was something else, Heberick said she suspected. She thought it was the tortured spirits. He was haunted by the ghosts of those he had killed. She mentally asked for his forgiveness as the rebellion's promise of slaughter led him here. Heberick asked him, "From where did you crawl?" and called him a bastard. Tobolkai had taken enough shit from Heberick and told him that he had said all he intended to say to him. The next time he spoke to Heberick, it would be when he killed him. Leoman came back up from the hole and told him he would not be killing anyone until he said so. And he had not said so. The Tobolkai stood all the way up, taking the water skin from Leoman. Heberick noted incredible patience and unwavering certainty as he took off down the trail. Heberick said the wood of his weapon was soaked in pain. He could not imagine the Tobolkai slept well at night. Leoman told him he hardly slept, period. Also, he will no longer bait him. Heberick told Leoman that he could not see the dead children tied to his heels, but he would make an effort to keep his mouth shut around him. Leoman told him the Tobolkai's tribe made very few distinctions. There were those of his tribe and those not. Those who were not kin were the enemy. Ahead, the road opened onto the mesa. On both sides of the road were row after row of oblong reddish humps of fired clay that were 7 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Fellison could see that these were everywhere surrounding the ruins of the lost city that lay before them. Heberick said this was a slow death. Leoman said they needed to cross to the other side and down to the harbor where they would find a hidden camp and cache, unless it had already been pillaged. Fellison looked around at all the broken pottery on the ground and said she would remember this site the next time she broke a pot. Heberick said he knew of scholars who claimed they could map the entirety of an extinct culture simply based on the leftovers such as these. Fellison said that sounded like a lifetime of excitement. Heberick said he would love to trade places with one of them. Fellison thought he was joking. Heberick said he was not the adventurous type. Fellison said maybe not at first, but then he was broken, shattered like one of these pots. He told Fellison he appreciated the observation. Fellison told him before he could be remade, first he had to be broken. He had told her she had become very philosophical in her, quote, advanced years. She thought to herself that it was more than he realized. She said to tell her that he had learned no truths. He scoffed and said he had learned one truth, that there are none, and she would learn that one day, many years from now, as Hood came for her. Leoman said there are indeed truths, Raraku, Dredjana, the whirlwind, and the apocalypse, the weapon in hand, the flow of blood. Heberick told Leoman that he had not made the journey they had gone through. He told them their journey was rebirth, and as Fellison had said, there was pain, only fools would expect otherwise. Heberick had no answer for that. They walked the city in silence, noting the geometry used for planning the city. Fellison looked back at Heberick and asked if he was still bothered by the ghosts. He said he was no longer plagued. There had been no brutality here, only sadness. And even that was only an undercurrent. Cities die. They even seem to follow the lifespan of humanity. Birth, vigorous youth, maturity, old age, then finally dust. In the last years of the city, the sea had already receded. A new influence had arrived, and there was a short renaissance of sorts, but it didn't last. Heberick said he began to recognize something of the ascendance. To live for hundreds of thousands of years, to see this blossom in all its glory, is it really wonder why their hearts grow cold? Fellison told him this journey had brought him closer to his God. He had nothing to say. At the harbor, he told them the last ships had sailed from here. The heaviest could only sail out when the tide was in, and even then they scraped the bottom. Some stayed until the aqueducts dried. This was only one story of Raraku. Not the bloodiest or the most violent, though. There were others much worse, but he wondered which was more tragic. Leoman told him he wastes his times on thoughts of the past. As he spoke, he was interrupted by Tobolkai. He was near a canal head. Quietly, Leoman strode off after his comrade. Fellison looked to follow Heberick. He grabbed her arm. Once Leoman was far enough away, he said he had fears. Felsen said she wasn't surprised. Toblikai wanted to kill him. Heberick said he wasn't bothered by that fool. It was Leoman he was worried about. Felsen said he was Shaik's bodyguard. She would need to trust him, but she was concerned that he and Toblikai did a shit job of it the first time around. Heberick said Leoman was not a fanatic, but he will try to make her think otherwise. Heberick says he doesn't think that Leoman actually believes Felsen is Shaik reborn. The rebellion just needs to have a face, a young, strong one, not the weathered old hag that the old Shaik must have been. Felsen said it was safe to assume they would play a bigger role this time around. Heberick told her only so long as she played their game, Leoman's game. He would be the one speaking to the army at the encampment. He may hint at doubts, and if so, they will tear Felsen apart. She said she didn't fear men like Leoman. She has an understanding of men like him. Heberick told her that Benneth was less than a child compared to Leoman, a tyrant to a handful of those less fortunate than him. He told Felsen she was doing worse than holding on to his memory. She was holding on to his dreams, and they were only delusions from the start. This enlisted a reaction from Felsen. She turned and snapped at Heberick, saying that she knew nothing, Jon Snow. He doesn't fear what a man can do. Does he presume to know her thoughts? Know what she feels? She calls him a presumptuous bastard. Heberick laughed, which stung Felsen. He asked her if she would keep him at her side. Perhaps as an ornament. Would she burn out his tongue to balance out his blindness? He is here only to keep her amused then. Odd that she would call him presumptuous. She told him to stop talking. She told him if one day they do come to an understanding of each other, it will be without words. What need of swords do they have when they both have sharp tongues? She calls for a truce. Heberick has one last question. Why does she want him to stay? She hesitated in answering, but told him she offered survival. She offered it for Bowden. Heberick said perhaps they will come to understand each other. Ugh, that was tough. I don't know what the fuck I had going on. I definitely feel like I lost some of my typing there because there was a few spots that things just didn't make sense. So, and I was trying to go off my memory from what I wrote, but I couldn't quite pull it all in together at the moment there. So, sorry everybody. That was pretty. That was kind of a broken section there. I feel like a little bit.
It's all good. It's all good. Feel like it's fine. It's kind of one of those sections where, again, you're not used to these characters, and you're really uncertain as to where this is really going,
Yeah, it was just probably some of the snarkiest stuff we've seen from Heberick, being snappy with Toblikai, Felsen being snarky to Heberick being snarky back to her, and Leoman being involved also. It was all kind of strange and bizarre, but it was a good section. I liked it quite a bit. I mean, Heberick being able to see, these souls that are strapped to Toblikai's ankles and everything like that was some really cool imagery.
What do you think it means, though? I mean, clearly, Heberick is seeing the past, and I think that this is a gift from the hand. So maybe the hand was one of Icarium's mechanisms, I I don't know, dude. Like, it's just there's so much information and I don't know what to make of it. Like, I understand it at its essence, but what does it mean?
I don't know. Maybe that the whatever Toblikai did, he's got these deaths that are weighing on him. Maybe not weighing on him, but dragging on him. Right. If they're tied to his ankles. It sounds like he had to do some pretty terrible things, killing children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, Heberick calls Toblikai with a secret name. So is Toblikai the race, or is Toblikai his name?
I think, because in the beginning of the book, I think we were introduced to Toblikai, and I think that's like a race. It's not his name. There was something where he said he won't speak his name or something. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Right.
So we got Toblikai guy.
I mean, why would Erickson not reveal his name? I mean, isn't that kind of suspicious too?
To me, is his name important?
I don't know. I mean, it could be. You know how he's talking about the kin and those that are not his kin, and I know Toblakai is the race, but it's very similar to the Trell and how Mappo kind of like banished himself from the peaceful Trell to inherit some of the Trell's older ways, of violence and taking action and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know. Something about Toblakai and things that he explains or Leoman explains about his kin, just for whatever reason reminded me of Napo's story. Whether that has anything to do with anything, I don't think so. And I can't even say with any type of confidence that it's correct. But I'm just stating that,
You feel there's some similarities?
yeah,
Sure. I can see that. I don't know. I mean, he must have had to go through some sort of genocide, I guess, against his own people.
right, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there should be a lot to talk about, but I can't make sense of any of it. Like I get that Hebrick is seeing the land in its past form and that it's not as old as the city that they were underneath prior to where they are. I get that. I don't know. There's just so much mystery surrounding Leoman and the Tobokai.
Yeah. Um, Part of me was wondering, like, are they at the same place? I don't know why I was feeling. Maybe it's just how things were written, but that they're both, at like dead cities, I guess. But where Mappo and Akarium and that group are at, are they at the same place? Maybe in different parts, but are they ultimately at the same place? I don't know if you had feelings like that at all.
I almost envisioned that they were separate cities, but
Okay.
yeah,
I wasn't sure. To me, they kind of felt similar, just being ruins and everything. But what the hell do you think these 7 foot tall humps of clay were? I didn't know what the hell those were. Just some sort of like gruesome grave or something. People were cooked alive in these and left out there. I don't know.
probably. I mean, very well could be. But is it also like 7 feet tall, 3 feet wide? I don't know. Maybe they're barrows. Maybe they're just small barrows. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not a ton of things here for me, but when Hebert grabs Felson's arm, I still cannot process and comprehend in my brain the visual of Hebert having no hands, visible hands, but he still grabs her arm and like, her body reacting to that grab, like being pulled back. I can't process that in my head.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. I can process it.
Yeah, just something I struggle with. And then, Hebert talking about how Leoman doesn't actually believe Felison's the Shaikh reborn. I know we kind of touched on this before, but yeah, man, if somehow it still does turn out to be Apsalar, damn, I don't know. I would at this point I don't even know if I would be surprised.
I mean, here's the thing is that like Felozin Felozin is just a series of unfortunate events after another. And I don't think that she is meant for this role because her intentions are purely just for revenge, which is not the heart of the apocalypse. The heart of apocalypse is taking back taking back their land from colonization or from the Malazan Empire. In a way,
But
it's
couldn't
revenge,
you?
but
Sure, yeah, it's just
no,
what I was going to point out. Like, couldn't you see that as a form of revenge? I
but
could.
I feel like Felizin is more pinpointed. Like she's only after one area, you know.
It's much more personal.
Right. I would agree with Hebrick. I don't think that she's kind of like what I was alluding to earlier in the episode. I don't think that she is Shaik reborn.
I'm not going to be surprised one way or the other. I don't think.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't know how. Like, just when we finished up the last chapter of the Chain of Dogs subbook, like neither one of us picked up on when she said beware his hands. Like, why didn't that set off alarms? Like, that's got to be Heberick. It didn't, because I mean I was thinking, oh, it's servant and he's got two different sized hands, but I guess I don't know why you'd be wary about that. But I don't know. It I feel like, looking back at it now, one chapter later, it should have set the alarms off, and for me, it didn't.
Right. Yeah, it didn't for me either, because, and I think it's the genius of Erickson's writing is like that is where he was intentionally guiding you. He was guiding you to believe that it was Apsalar. But, the other part of me is like, now he's kind of guiding us to it being Felazin, but on the same hand, not really.
Yeah, I think we're a little more cautious there, but I mean, we definitely bit hook, line, and sinker there and went for it. So
yes, we did.
Oh.
I really like this section. The dynamic between these characters is just very estranged, and you can kind of feel that awkwardness kind of coming off the pages, But Felsen also seems to have this like newfound confidence, like she does almost feel renewed because she's going to be gifted this power that let her succeed in her goals. But, she just seems determined now, whereas before she was just like, let Hood take me.
Yeah, she's got a different attitude now. My last bullet point on this section, Hebrig asks why does she want him to stay, and she kind of hesitates, but she says she offers him survival. She offered it for Bowden, which just the way it was worded kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. So do you think she's saying she's staying alive to avenge Bowden? Because that's kind of what I interpreted, I guess. I don't know how you took it.
I feel like she was saying that because of not necessarily to avenge, but just to like share it forward kind of a thing, that like precipice where, Bowden made sure that she was safe and Hebrik was safe, even though she was being pretty difficult about it. And I think she's just extending the invitation to Hebrik because Bowden would have, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. That was all I had here. I like that section, but I'm going to be happy to move on from it for now. So
right. I feel like it's definitely one of those things where, as guilty as I feel that I can't comment on a ton of it because I feel like there's a lot of nuggets of information in there, I feel like that section is going to be one of those sections that come clearer as we move and progress through the book.
Yeah, I think we'll look back at it and be like, okay, it'll provide that clarity.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I'm good if you're good.
Do it.
All right. The canal mouth was marked by a broad series of stone steps. At the base, which had once been the seabed, stood another stone wall, more recently constructed. A ring of stones marked the fire pit, and the old cobbles that once covered the cache were now scattered about, a gutted cairn. The subject of the Toblakai's outcry was the 7 half-eaten corpses scattered about the camp, their blood soaking into the white sand, and the stench of emptied bowels hung in the air. Leoman crouched by the stairs, observing the blood-stained footprints leading back up into the city. He looked over at the Toblakai and said that if he wanted this one, that he would have to go alone. The giant bared his teeth. He dropped his bedroll and water skin and unsheathed his sword. Hebrik snorted and tells him that if he plans to hunt down the soul taken, then he must be nearing the end of the tribe's life expectancy. Hebrik said that he wouldn't grieve the Toblakai's death. The Toblakai maintained his vow, refusing to address Hebrik. He turned to Leoman and said that he is Raraku's vengeance against such intruders. Leoman told the Toblakai that if he is, then to avenge his kin. The Toblakai raced up the steps, studied the tracks, and then disappeared from their sight. Hebrik said that he will be killed by the soul taken. Leoman shrugged at this and said that perhaps he will. Shaik had seen far into his future. Felsen asked what she saw. Leoman responded by saying that Shaik didn't say, as it was appalling to her. Felsen was in shock at this. She turned to Hebrik, who seemed like he himself had just heard a glimmer of confirmation of a future he had just sensed. Felsen asked Leoman to tell her of other visions. Leoman was moving the kin's bodies when he stopped and explained that when she opens the holy book, they shall be visited upon her. that and other gifts. Felsen asks if she expected to do this ritual before they reached the encampment. Leomin said that she must, as the ritual is proof that she is truly Shaik reborn. Hebert grunted and asked what exactly that meant. Leomin said that if she is false, the ritual will destroy her. Okay, so here's my take. I feel like everything that we've read is alluding to Felsen not being the Shaik reborn. And it was funny because I almost wrote Dragon Reborn there. So if that's the case, then this ritual will surely kill her. Well, I refuse to believe that she'll be taken out in this book. So this leaves us with a dud of a book. A fake, a phony, infused with magic to give it the false appearance of the book. I think you're eating a pie, Derek. I think you're eating a pie. I think you're eating a pie.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
I mean, I don't think she's the Shaik reborn. I feel like the book is on Kalam's boat. The real book. Because that would be Pormqual's treasures. That would be part of it.
So what's going to happen with it there then?
I think nothing. I think absolutely nothing's going to happen. They're going to get, and they're going to be like, oh, this isn't the right book. And I think that Felsen gets disappointed, and she becomes even more of a brat, because now she doesn't know how she's going to be, I feel like Leomin seems pretty indifferent about the Toplakai being killed by the Soul Taken. So, honestly, though, I feel like Hebert has something to do with all of this and his hands. So, maybe they meet up with Fiddler, Absalar, and maybe they are in the same city and they walk around and, no, there's Tremolor. And they all... I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like it's too easy. It's too easy for Felsen to already be Shaik Reborn. I feel like it's just too easy.
Sometimes that's the way of things.
Maybe Hebert is Shaik. Who says it has to be a chick?
I guess I don't know if we've seen anything that says it has to.
So, I mean, he does seem to have memories, right?
Yeah.
He is seeing Raraku's past, and Leomin and the Tobakai do not like that. He's got these two differing hands that seem to be doing two different things, So, yeah.
Gotta ride it out.
Maybe Hebert.
I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting if that somehow comes true, but I think it's still going to be one of the two that we already have.
So here's
either Absalar or Felsen.
Right. This is totally unrelated, but do you remember when they called out Fenner? Whatever happened to him? Is he still hiding within Hebert, or is that just waiting to be talked about again?
Oh, when he almost curb stomped him, basically.
Yeah.
I just see a giant foot coming down and striding across the land. I don't know. Yeah, I've been wondering that too, because since that's happened, it's not been brought up again.
Right.
At all.
Unless it has something to do with his hands. I don't know. That's the part where there's so many possibilities, and I'm excited to read what eventually that is.
Yeah. We're running out. We're starting to run out of pages.
You know who else hasn't been mentioned in a while?
Who?
Moby.
Moby has not been mentioned in a while.
Yeah. So where'd he go? Maybe he's Shaik Reborn.
He's just out chilling.
Fuck another Boakrala.
Maybe you could just go ask Bent about it.
Right. But yeah, I guess so many questions. This is definitely a chapter where new things are being proposed. But yeah, anyway, I think that it's fair that we could probably move on.
Okay. This was another pretty darn good section coming up here. Hopefully my shit makes sense this time around. Let me get to the right spot. All right. The ancient island rose above the plain. Stumps marked what used to be mooring poles, and piers lay just beyond what had once been the shoreline. Fiddler and Mappo watched Icarium make his way up the old seawall. Crocus stood behind with the horses. Mappo thought he had been awfully quiet since the last meal stop, and he had started to move and act differently. He seemed to be emulating a Carium. Mappo was indifferent to this, but he thought it would have been better if he portrayed Fiddler. Fiddler said it looked like Icarium knew where he was climbing and asked if he had been here before. Mappo said he had not, but Icarium, well, he had wandered this area before. Fiddler asked if Icarium had returned to a place he had been to before. How would he know? Mappo shook his head and thought to himself that he shouldn't. He hasn't before. He hoped those barriers weren't breaking down and prayed to the Queen of Dreams to return him to ignorant bliss. Fiddler said they should join him. Reluctantly, Mappo followed. Halfway up their climb, Fiddler grabbed a piece of wood. He said he needed to rethink things as the wood had turned to stone. Crocus said it was petrified and it took thousands of years. One of the men said a high mage with the Drisswarn could accomplish this feat in the blink of an eye. Continuing on the climb, Fiddler said the city was long dead before the sea dried up. Crocus asked how he could know that. Fiddler told him everything was worn by water. He had seen what water could do. Imagine century after century of waves. The Emperor had Malaz Bay dredged before the Imperial piers were built. This revealed old seawalls and the like, and showed everyone that Malaz City was a lot older than anyone realized. Mappo chimed in that the sea levels had risen since then also. At the top of the wall, the city sprawled before them. What remained was clearly weather worn, but it was also apparent that it had been deliberately destroyed. The city was leveled. Mappo had begun to sense a pattern with all the destroyed buildings and remnants. A legend told in the Jag-Otan, told by the elders in his tribe, he thought. Nobody had eyes on Icarium. Fiddler asked where to next. Mappo stepped ahead. Fiddler asked if he caught a scent. Mappo hardly heard him. The pattern of the city was hard to distinguish from what remained, but Mappo followed his own mental image. Recollecting from the memory of a legend, its cadence and precise metering when recounted in the harsh dialect of ancient Trell, who had no written language and took use of speech to astonishing extremes. Words were numbers, were codes, were formulae, holding secret maps within, the measuring of paces, the patterns of the mind, the histories of cities, continents, and warrens. The tribe that had adopted Mappo all those years ago had stuck to the old ways, rejecting the change that affected them all. The elders of the tribe had shown Mappo what was in danger of being lost, the power of spoken word. Mappo knew where Icarium had gone, and he knew what he would find. His heart was pounding out of his chest. 7 main avenues within each city of the First Empire. The sky spirits looked down upon the holy number. 7 scorpion tails, 7 stings facing the circle of sand. To all who would make offerings to the 7 holies, look to the circle of sand. Fiddler called out from behind him, but he didn't respond. He was on a curving avenue, heading towards the center. 7 scorpion sting thrones had once towered over the center, each 77 arm spans high. Each had been shattered. He thought by sword blows, by an unbreakable weapon in the hands powered by a rage almost impossible to comprehend. There was a little left that was not broken, but he found Icarium in front of one of the few things not broken. He did not move. He looked to the sky at the giant construction before him. Iron gears that did not rust or corrode still moved in a manner not able to be seen by mortal eyes. It was marble faced, carved with symbols, facing the sun, though it could hardly be seen through the haze. Mappo stopped a few feet behind Icarium. Icarium was confused. How could this be, friend? It pained Mappo to hear Icarium so. It was like the voice of a lost child. Icarium said this was his gift, or that is what he is translating from the ancient Omtos writing. He had also marked the season and year of construction, allowing him to calculate how old it was. He was speechless. Mappo was also speechless, hugging himself. He felt like he had come face to face with a nightmare. Icarium spoke. He asked why, when the city was destroyed, why was this left? Sorcery was invested into it, true, so it would be immune to time, but all things made can be broken. Mappo prayed that Icarium wouldn't turn around. He didn't know if he could face him. Icarium said perhaps he made a mistake. A mistake in the measurement or a slip of the script? Amtos was an old language after all, and he is not perfect after all, but he calculated 94,000 years had passed since he last stood here. It must be an error. What ruins in a city could last that long? Mappo thought, how could they know one way or the other? Icarium asked who destroyed the city. Mappo didn't have the heart or the courage to tell Icarium that he was the one who destroyed the city. But even in his rage, he recognized what he had built and left it intact. Icarium said whoever they were had immense power. The Talan Imus arrived here and sought to drive the enemy back, an old alliance between the dwellers of the city and the silent host. Their shattered bones lined the dirt below in the thousands. What had power to do such a thing? The Jaghut, even at the height of their reign, didn't have the power, and the Kachane Shamal had been extinct even longer. He did not understand. Mappo put a hand on his friend's shoulder and said it was obvious enough for him to see. It was an ascendant's power. The fury of a god or goddess unleashed this devastation. Ancient cities often reached above themselves and were cut down. To Mappo, this all looked personal. A god or goddess's hand slapped down here, and whoever it was had since drifted from the mortal minds, and he could not think of an ascendant strong enough to cause such damage. Icarium said that they could, though, but they had learned how to be subtle when interfering with mortal concerns. But he suspects that Fiddler had answered his question. Mappo found that his heartbeat was slowing. He only hoped that Icarium wouldn't think on this construct any longer. Icarium turned to Mappo and said, 94,000 years. That must be a mistake. And he gave Mappo a small smile. Mappo fought tears and turned away as another wave of sadness hit him. Fiddler asked if they could continue looking for Apsalar and her father. Icarium said that was a good idea, as they were close to many things, it appeared. Damn.
Woofta, man.
That one hit pretty hard.
It does hit really hard. And again, it follows the same theme this whole chapter does. And it's just like, what the fuck does it mean? You know, like it's there, like you can see it, but what does it mean? You know?
I don't know. I guess we learned that Mappo destroyed at least this city, leveled it, killed a lot of people. The Talan, or Icarium, yes, thank you. The Talan Imus tried to stop him, and it sounds like he beat the fuck out of them, killed a bunch of them. But all that makes me wonder, okay, so he did this. He was on a rampage, but what made him stop? At some point he stopped. So why and what caused that?
I don't know. I am like completely dumbfounded by this whole Icarium storyline, this whole Mappo and Icarium storyline. I know that, and while you were reading this, I remember back to Gardens of the Moon when Animander Rake was talking to Baruch about meeting Icarium and Mappo once, and I feel like he said something about him having a disagreement with them. And we know that Icarium is, so maybe it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's the Tisti Udur that came and fought him, or I don't know. What about the Fork Rule of Sail? Aren't they the other elder race? Like, I feel like they never get mentioned.
Yeah, they haven't had much mention yet.
Right.
I don't know. I keep thinking, this time that we're giving, Icarium's been alive, more than 94,000 years. So how old was he when he did this? I don't know. But the only other time I can think of where we've had such a massive amount of time mentioned was in Gardens of the Moon, where was it one of the Rivi said they'd see somebody in like 120,000 years or something. I can't even remember what it was.
I don't remember that.
But I have a vague recollection of, I can't remember exactly who or what it was, but I think it was in Krupp's dreams, maybe. I don't remember exactly. Somebody out there can correct me. But yeah, like that's such a insane amount of time to have passed. 94,000 years is insane.
Right. And Mappo knows everything. Mappo knows exactly what's going on. So was he there to witness it? He must have.
I don't know if he was there. I think he probably just, maybe he had some sort of vision or something. He was gifted the knowledge of what happened.
Oh, right, because he says there's a legend told in the Jag Odin, told by the legend elders in his tribe. So is Mappo from the Jag Odin?
Maybe. I don't
Or
remember if we had a location he was from, but
yeah,
I just, I think it turned out you were right. He was trying to keep Akarium from finding maybe not this specific incident out, but as a whole, he was trying to keep him from finding out what he did. And he's at least turned over one stone of one pretty awful thing that he did for some reason. And man, Mappo can't even like look him in the eye.
mm-hmm.
That was pretty deep. He's barely able to hold himself together as Akarium was kind of realizing what he did, and he probably can't even really reckon with it yet. Just those raw feelings and emotions of what he did. I don't know how you would comprehend that you just leveled a whole city. But even in the midst of all that anger and everything else that was outpouring, he saw this one thing that he created, and he's like, nope, that's mine. I'm not breaking that.
Right. So, I mean, it kind of makes the illusion or alludes to rather that that Icarium used to be an ascendant. I feel it's like where that's coming to. And he probably built these mechanisms of time and as gifts, and maybe this town just didn't appreciate it or didn't use it, and he got pissed off at that and comes down. But I imagine that whoever sailed the city was a giant, right?
Yeah. Or I mean, like in the Power Rangers when they have their like
Yep,
Zords and they like
that's what I was thinking.
did he just like, I don't want to say like level up, but did he just like bloop bloop bloop,
Right.
and get bigger? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just, I mean, like I said, it makes sense what happens, but the reasons why he did it and the reasons why he can't remember, those are the things that like we're missing. Like the puzzle is slowly coming together, but we're still missing some very important pieces of information. And I want to be able to talk about it, but I just, for whatever reason, am just so dumbfounded by this chapter that I don't feel like I can, draw any conclusions,
It was, it was a man. I mean, reading that, I didn't really have like my heart beating out of my chest on it, but it was just like, you get this realization and your stomach just kind of drops. It was kind of my reaction to it. You're just like, oh man. And it's scary to hear how powerful Icarium is, and he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know his own strength. And it also makes me wonder if Mappo would have told him what he had done versus having him kind of discover it on his own. How would he have reacted to that? And I think it probably would have been worse.
Right. Maybe. Well, I mean, I feel like, how I don't remember specifically what chapter this was, but Fiddler and Mappo were talking about Icarium and the rumors that Fiddler has heard were so much more brutal than what he's experienced of Icarium. So I feel like that has something to do with it as well. I mean, the stories of Icarium are not nice.
No.
So I'm sure that plays into this. But again, the reasons why he can't remember, those are things that we don't know at this point. And again, it's just this like, come on, let's race to the end. Let's get it done. Like,
yeah.
I'm just like, I want to know, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, we'll have to see what we get in the next chapter, because that's all we're going to get here for another week.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm ready to move on if you are. I mean, I feel like we haven't done this section justice, but I don't think we have the information to do it.
It was something. Just again, the visuals on it, and just beautifully written for how terrible of a realization it was. It was well done.
Right. Well, and I mean this chapter, and we could kind of come back to this point at the end, but this chapter has three main points that the whole book has been alluding to this whole time. We've got Apsalar slash Felazin slash Shaik story, right? And then we've
Yeah.
got Icarium and his memories, Icarium Mappo and his memories, and then of course what happens at the end. Those have all been like three driving storylines on top of Coltane stuff and Duiker stuff in this chapter. So it is all over the place, and it's just outside of maybe the Duiker sections, it's just new information after new information after new information, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is cool. Give me more. I want more.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know that I'll get to read it tonight, but I'm going to be looking forward to reading this next chapter pretty quick.
Yeah. All right. Well, here is my last section.
Take it away.
The night he left all those centuries ago, in the hours before his old loyalties were ritually stripped from him, Mappo had knelt before the eldest shoulder woman in her tent. Mappo was pleading to know more of these nameless ones. Who demanded this of him? He asked if they were sworn to a god. The eldest shoulder woman explained that they were once sworn to a god, but no more. Unable to meet Mappo's eyes, she continues on. She says, cast out, cast down, in the time of the first empire, which was not, in truth, the first, for the Talani Mass claimed that title long before. They were the left hand, another sect, the right hand, both guiding, meant to be clasped. Instead, those who come to be unnamed in their journeys into mysteries. She made a chopping motion with one hand. It was a gesture Mappo had not seen amongst the other elders, a gesture he realized of Jahag. She continued what she was saying. Mysteries of another led them astray. They bowed to a new master. That is all there is to say. Mappo asked who this new master was. The woman shook her head and turned away. Mappo begged to know whose power resided in the staves they carried. She did not answer. In the passage of time, Mappo believed he found the answer to that question. It was knowledge that was, however, uncomfortable. So, what the fuck was that
Yeah.
fucking section, right? But what they were talking about is his old loyalties. They're referring to the peaceful Trell, the ones that didn't want anything to do about the Trells that had been abducted, like Mappo had been. So it sounds like this new group of Trells that Mappo is now resides with, his old loyalties were ritually stripped from him. So they made a ritual or some type of initiation, I'm imagining, so that he could become these newer Trells. The whole meant to be collapsed together. It sounds like to me the Talani Mass, which was the left hand, is what they said, and then this unknown, which is the right, which I get the feeling is likely related to the jade fingers that were touched by Hebrick. Whatever ancient civilization or power that was is the jade finger. Okay? So they were the left hand, another sect the right hand. Both were supposed to guide. But instead, those who would come unnamed, nameless ones, right? They cut off the hand. They cut off one hand. And now these Trells follow this like new leader. So it kind of sounds like whoever came in chopped off one of the hands, either the Talan or this jade finger, right? Does that make sense?
I think it seems like it ties in somehow, but I don't know how. I mean, what you're saying, I don't know how much it makes sense to me, and not because I disagree. It's just because it's kind of like a lot, you know?
Well, I think that the people that took over were the Jaghat. I think that they came in and they chopped off one of the hands.
Okay.
Okay. So this is why Mappo is burdened with following the Jaghat. Why? I don't know. Something to do with that. Or maybe it's because of whatever half he is. Maybe that other half that the Jaghut is the hand that was cut off by the Jaghut. You know, maybe there was some type of Romeo and Juliet shit going on. And the result is a Carium. So maybe the Jaghut that are these Trell's new masters wanted somebody to watch a Carium to make sure. I don't know. I don't fucking know, dude. All I gotta say is, and this is my last point, which I don't have any conclusivity to it outside of the fact. Do you remember when Hebrick was killing all the rats with Grylan?
Yes.
How one was rust red and the other was like jade?
I don't know if I remember that part.
Okay.
One of the rats was, or his hands?
His hands. Remember how I thought?
Oh, okay.
Otatero?
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I was thinking you meant like there was like a particular rat that was like colored. I'm like, I don't remember that.
No, just his hands and the way that they glowed. But I'm thinking about it. Talani Mass also have like an earthy smell. So rust red,
like rotting corpses.
Right. So his left hand, which aligns here, right? The left hand, they were the left hand. I'm pretty sure Hebrick's left hand was rust red and his right was jade. So I think that Hebrick has something to do with this balance. I don't know.
Not gonna disagree.
It's too weird to not be true.
It definitely seems like that would make sense that they're tied to, with, like you said, how, why, I don't know, but it seems to make some sort of sense.
So, right, exactly. And I think that the Talan and this other elder race were working together. And I think what happened is the Jaghut came in and like severed a hand, and now they're not as powerful and the Jaghut took over because we know that the Jaghut from Gardens of the Moon did enslave the Talani Mass. Like that was something that Reyes talked about, right? Or am I crazy?
I thought so. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
I need to go back. I need to start reading it, go back and read it again while we're almost nearing this end. But yeah, again, so much information and what it makes sense. It's just like, it's slowly adding in another word to the sentence. It's just slow and yeah, it's slow, but all very worth it. And I'm excited for the payoff, I guess. Did you have any thoughts about this section?
No, I did not. Other than I wonder the deal about the staves, because I kind of remember those being talked about earlier, but I don't have any super specific memories on it, but I remember they were mentioned.
Right. So I guess we'll fucking see, man. I don't know. Ugh. It's all just exciting and I just want to keep reading.
Well, we'll be able to do that.
All right, man. Well, take her away. Take her home.
All right. As night crept in, the group left the island behind and struck out across the plain. The horses needed water, and even Mappo and Akarium's skill couldn't turn up any. Mappo didn't know how Apsalar and her father were able to keep ahead of them day after day, but they did. He thought to himself that the trail and the end goal had nothing to do with Shaiks, as they were traveling in the wrong direction. They were far from where she was killed in her oasis. He knew Fiddler knew where they were going. Somehow he knew. He also thought that maybe Crocus didn't know their destination, but he could also be underestimating him. He had grown, Mappo thought. As night started to fall, there was enough light left to see tracks converging on Apsalar and her father's. Tracks of Soul Taken and Divers in a staggering number. Crocus fell back behind everyone else, and no one really noticed. They heard him shout, "I knew you were lurking about, you weasel. All I had to do was wait, and now I've got you." The others turned around and saw Crocus pinning Poos to the ground. Poos stopped fighting and hissed at Crocus, saying, "Another 1,000 paces, and the deceit will be complete. Have you seen the signs of my glorious success? Any of you? Are you all dimwits? Oh, so unkind in my nefarious thoughts. But see me respond to their accusations in manly silence. Ha!" Akarium told Crocus he could let him up now. He wasn't going to run. Crocus countered, Let 'em up? How about string 'em up? Fiddler told him next tree they came across, they would, and it was a promise. Crocus let go of him, and he scrambled to his feet, looking like he could dart in any direction. Puss spoke. Do I dare accompany them? Do I risk the glory of witnessing with my own eyes the fullest yield of my brilliant efforts? Well disguised, this uncertainty, they know nothing. Crocus said he was coming with them no matter what. Puss said, of course. He was trying to catch up anyways. He spoke on. He believes me. I can see it in his face. The soft-brained dolt. Who is a match for Iskerl Poost? No one. I must remain quietly triumphant. The key to understanding lies in the unknowing nature of the Warrens. Can they be torn into fragments? Oh, yes, they can. And the secret of Rarku? They wander more than one world, all unknowing, and before us. Ah, the slumbering giant that is the heart, the true heart, not Shayik's grubby oasis. Oh, such fools abound. He looked at the others. Why do you stare so? We should be walking 1,000 paces, no more. To your heart's desire, hee. He broke into a dance. Crocus was irritated enough at this point and said, let's go. Mappo looked to Icarium and found him looking back at him. He thought, a fragmented warren? What on earth happened to this land? Silence was his only answer, but he kept thinking. The legends claim that Icarium emerged from this place, strode out of Raraku, a warren torn to pieces. Raraku changes all who stride its soil. Gods, have we indeed come to the place where Icarium's living nightmare was born? A dozen strides ahead, Icarium stopped and turned. Ahead of them, they saw two figures, Apsalar and Servant. Mappo thought about how Servant was the only name he knew him by. Icarium said they found them, though. It appears they were waiting before a threshold. Fiddler wasn't pleased. Threshold? Quickben never mentioned anything like that. A threshold to what? Poost hissed in reply. A knotted toward piece of warren. See how the path of hands led them here, and the fools followed, one and all. The high priest was tasked to set a false trail. Look how he has done so. Crocus asked why her father led them all here in the first place, so they could be slaughtered by soul taken into Ivers? Pooh said it was Servant's journey home and called Crocus a withered mole carcass. That is, if the convergence doesn't kill him first, and the sapper, and him, Crocus, also. Then he told Crocus to ask Icarium what was within the warren, what waits like a clenched fist holding down this fragment of a realm. Apsalar and her father approached. Mappo wondered how this reunion would unfold, but nothing he envisioned would match reality. Crocus didn't notice them yet, but he was drawing his daggers in preparation for the high priest. Icarium was behind Crocus, ready to disarm him. Crocus, though, could see nothing, and Poost was throwing his voice so it seemed to come from every direction. Do you dare tread the path? He sang over and over. Apsalar stopped before Mappo and said she knew he would win out. She turned to look at Crocus and said she was here. Crocus whirled, sheathed his daggers, and closed the distance. They wrapped up in a hug. Mappo could see that an aura of a god still clung to her, and it didn't leave him at ease. Icarium stood with Mappo and said it was Tremolor. Icarium continued and said that there are those who say the Azath are benign, a force to keep power in check, arising when and where they are needed, and he was beginning to see truth in that. Icarium said he sensed Soul Taken into Ivers closing in, seeking the house. Interrupted, Mappo said they believed it was a gate. Fiddler joined the conversation, saying there was indeed a gate there, just not the one the shapeshifters wanted. Also, they will not get to it. The grounds of the Azath will take them. There was a new voice. It was Servant. He said it might take them all, and he would be much obliged if they could talk his daughter out of going any further. They can't try the gate because it's inside the house. Fiddler said yet he led her here. Even if they were looking for Tremolor, their, meaning Servant's, reasons were really just Poost's, weren't they? Mappo asked if he had a name. Servant said his name was Relic, and he couldn't guess at the high priest's motives. He only did what he was told. This was a final task, one to clear his debt. He always clears his debts, even to gods. Fiddler said they gave him back an arm he lost. Relic said they also spared his life and his daughter's the day the hounds came. No one else survived. Grunting, Fiddler said the hounds belonged to the gods he made the deal with. Relic said, even so, this was a false trail to lead the shapeshifters away from the true gate, the one beneath Puth's temple, Icarium said. Relic said they needed to finish the trail. Now that's done, they had hidden the shadows while shapeshifters rushed in. If he's fated to die in his bed in Eco Khan, then so be it. It doesn't matter how long the walk is. Puth saying that Relic wants to return home to fish, but the place he left is not the place he will return to. Over the years, Relic has done work guided by the hands of gods, and that he is the heart of the Empire. The scene should take note. Fiddler returned to his horse and readied his crossbow, saying the rest of them could make up their own minds, but he needed to go in. Also, they should let the horses go. He patted the growl horse and said he had done well and made him proud, but he will do better out there. Lead the others to Shaik's camp. It took a moment, but the others followed suit. Icarium turned to Mappo and said he must go. Mappo closed his eyes, trying to calm himself, thinking why was he such a coward. Icarium, looking for a response, asked his friend again. Mappo didn't speak, but nodded. Puth said they would all go, seeking answers and more answers. But in my silent thoughts I snigger and warn you all with words that you will not hear. Beware sleight of hand. Compared to the Azath, my immortal lords are but fumbling children.
I liked your rendition of Puth's voice. That was fun. Entertaining. Very entertaining.
It's just kind of, I read these things and you kind of get like a voice in your head a little bit. So I just wanted to convey that a little bit. I kind of got, I was thinking about this earlier, but I know I said he reminds me of Professor Farnsworth, but in this chapter, I really felt like he was Heath Ledger's Joker a little bit, and somebody else. I can't remember who the other one I was thinking of. Like, it was a mix of things. I I really like. He's just so contradictory, isn't he? He's saying, in my silent thoughts, I snigger and warn you all with words you will not hear, but you're speaking out loud. Like, they're hearing these things you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Puth is one of my favorite characters so far. And he's nonsensical. He doesn't make any damn sense,
No.
But at the same time, he does, so.
He's an interesting character. I don't think I like him in the same way that you do, but I'm definitely intrigued by him.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of what I was talking about with like the three major storylines. We've got the Shaik storyline coming to fold. We've got Kalam's storyline being revealed, I guess, or moving forward. Coltane and his journey with Duiker. And then we've got Mappo and Icarium and, Icarium's memories and a little bit of like Mappo's past. Hebrick here with the hands. And then, of course, now we've got Tremolor and the Azath. So it's just so full and rich of information that you just cannot make heads or tails of because you're right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I wonder a lot of things about this. Talk about like this threshold, and Puth is saying they need to go like another 1,000 paces. So I'm like thinking, okay, so this threshold, is that just going to like, if they can get all the soul taken and the divers there, is the Azath somehow going to like trap them within that area where they can't, escape that?
I think they kill them.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine too. I mean, somehow you take him out one way or the other, right?
Right. But I also get kind of the sense that there are soul taken and divers out there that maybe have maybe a little bit of speculation. Like Miss Embre, the bear, and Grylan, right? Like they don't seem to be in this huge hurry to get where they're supposed to go,
You're right.
So it's just, I wasn't expecting the Tremolor thing to come up at all in this chapter, and that was another thing that was just completely unexpected. I thought that was going to be one of the ending things. It sounds like Fiddler's about ready to head in, and Icarium is also about ready to head in, which means Mappo is going to follow. And, I think that somehow that's all going to take place, and I feel like they're going to meet up with Kalam somewhere along the way, you know, and just everything with Apsalar and her father, like it sounds like they're going to go in there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I'm lost for words. Like this is, I feel like the first chapter that has me lost for words. Like it just can't, and the whole Shattered Warren thing, like I feel like again that relates to the hands, or even potentially the Tisti Udur Warren, like that was, potentially abandoned and commandeered by Kellanved. Granted, all of this seems to have happened way before Kellanved and Dancer ascended, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many ways to tie everything together, and I'm sure that none of it is right. And I
There's
think
only going to be one right answer, and we're not going to find it out till we finish this book series.
I have a feeling though
At
it's
least
gonna
this
be like
book.
so obvious. It's gonna be one of those things that's just so obvious.
Maybe. It's so hard to say right now. I don't know.
Right. But I guess overall I would say this is like, one of those chapters that I like thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I probably read it about 3.5 times, including the summary.
I guess I read it. I read it summarized, and then just reread it yesterday, and then this morning before recording. So finished reading it this morning. I guess I got 2.5 out of it. So I'm definitely glad that I reread it again, because especially that first part of the chapter, and especially the parts that I didn't summarize, I probably would have struggled with even more.
Yeah. It's crazy that Poost has basically accomplished what it is that he was supposed to accomplish. I mean, he has led them here. I feel like there's also a motivation to lead them here as well. That the Tremolor has something to do with Shadowborn prophecies. Yeah, it's just there's just so much information. My head is like reeling. I don't know what to make of any of it, which I feel like is uncharacteristic of what I do in this show. But I can't figure it out. It just leads me to believe that's where we're supposed to be.
I think the next chapter will probably see them enter, and I don't beyond that I don't know what we're going to see. I kind of wonder if I don't know, like with Coltane, I don't know if we're going to get another battle yet. I feel like that might be a chapter after that, but obviously, I mean, we're going to be progressing towards another one, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that we read it probably makes Coltane's march a little bit more drawn out than it would probably align with in real life. But I feel like the pattern is that like we get a battle, then we get kind of some downtime, and then we get another battle, and then some downtime, and then another battle. So I think that if I had to predict, I think that Coltane will reach the Vathar Forest. I do believe that he is going to beat Corblow down there because they are pushing so hard. Um, I feel like we're gonna get some more clues as to Carium and Mappo's deal. I think that Felazin will get more of a reveal there.
Yeah, I would agree with all those. I think Coltane and all that crew, I think they're going to booby trap the shit out of that forest.
Right. I think so
That's
too.
my thought.
And hopefully the whole, whatever List's Elder Vision is revealed to us. Maybe not all at once, but we might get a little bit of an understanding as to what happened there. And, maybe it was. Maybe Icarium went all across 7 cities destroying a bunch of shit,
I'm interested to find out more on that. I'm sure we're going to get more revealed as far as like what happened in his past and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I guess do you have any other thoughts on this section? Like I said, I feel like I should have more, but just the dynamic between these characters, like I could totally understand Crocus wanting to kick the shit out of Poost. I'm kind of glad to see Crocus and Apsalar kind of embrace into this like long hug. you know. Yeah,
And yeah, it was good to see. Like, there's not many like feel good moments, and that was a little bit of one.
yeah. And we finally find out Apsalar's father's name after 2 books, you know,
We've got Relic, we've got Rallic, we've got
Malik.
Malik. Like, we got too many similar sounding names here.
Yeah. I
I
feel
think
like
some of
there's
them are gonna
enough
have to start
headcanon,
getting killed off.
right? I feel like there's enough headcanon to just like differentiate them though.
Yeah, yeah, there is.
But maybe Ralik Nam makes an appearance at this Deadhouse. Maybe he's inside with Vorkan, and maybe there's a reunification between Crocus and Ralik, you know. So,
Perhaps.
or maybe they end up in Malaz City.
Well, we're gonna have to read this next chapter and see if we get a little closer to any of these things.
Yeah. You know what we forgot to do though, right?
I do.
Yep. I don't know why we always forget to do that. I think it's just because we knew that it was going to be a very long episode. I mean, we're damn near in 4 hours now. So
Right.
I'll let you have the honors.
All right. Well, guys, since we forgot to do this at the beginning of the show, we just want to thank our patrons, Jan, the picker of pies, Luciana, and Ryan, the topological. Thank you to you three for your patronage here these past months. We appreciate it a lot.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Um, we would like to be able to purchase a bigger, faster storage solution for our episodes here. So we appreciate that very, very much.
Definitely. Also, check us out online, Twitter. We created a TikTok account now. We posted some stuff there, so check that out. Just kind of some fun, dumb stuff. So
Yeah,
uh,
definitely some fun, dumb stuff.
that's the point, right? I got this morning when I woke up, and even last night, I got sucked into that. I was watching ingrown hair removals and pimple popping and shit like that. So
See, this is what happened in 2001 Space Odyssey. I woke up and I doom scrolled TikTok. Like, it's just what I did.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, dude, awesome episode. It was fun to get into it. I'm probably going to take the next couple of hours before my kids get home to read this next episode. So, yeah.
I don't. I might just go watch some hockey here. The Wild play at 5:30, and I'm sure there's a game going on now, so I'll probably watch that. So I don't know when I'll get a chance to read it. Probably Tuesday. I'm going to donate plasma, so I'll probably read then. But yeah, it'll be another solid chapter. That one's like 45 pages or something like that.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely well into the 600s. So, not too much longer. Not too much longer at all.
Nope, we're getting there.
I think when we're done with this chapter, we'll have about 200 pages left. So,
Somewhere around there.
yeah. Well, cool, man. As always, enjoy your night and enjoy watching some hockey. So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yep. You have a good night. We'll talk soon.
All right, later, dude.
See ya.
Bye.